should know. I have never really liked you at all. I cannot hide it anymore. I've been thinking about the future, trying to forget about the past. So many ways that I could change for the better. Don't even
This is a true crime discussions channel. We speculate. This is all just speculation. Because it's true crime, it's for mature audiences only. There will be no children allowed, no exceptions. Everything on this channel falls under fair use. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share. It's free.
Yo, ever since I got YouTube Red, it's like I'm having technical difficulty. So far, I hate this. I freaking hate it. I'm trying to do something that I need to do, like to go into this live that's playing right now, and it won't work. Like I freaking hate it so far. Hey everybody, sorry, I didn't mean to come in hot like that. Thank you for so much for being here, Sarah, Abellis, Trixie, Bad Girl, Rubber Ramada Room, Cozy, Cozy, Maligator. I saw you were here earlier, and Jenny Jen, and True Crime Addict. Thank you for being here, you guys. I really appreciate that on a Sunday too. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you so very much. We're going to talk about a couple of things today. We'll go ahead and get started with the Edmond Kemper interviews that I wanted to go through with you guys. And then we're going to talk about somebody that reminds me of this Jason Spillers dude that we have seen on TV in the Chloe Driver case. Oh, hold on, y'all. While we're doing this, I'm going to try to do a couple of other things. So if it gets weird, I will fix it as soon as I can. And again, I want to thank you all for being here. If you're new to the channel, thank you so much for coming over and checking us out. I really appreciate it. Thank you, guys. I'm going to go ahead and start this interview. This is the Edmond Kemper interview from 1984, and it is from True Crime Magazine. Sorry if I sound weird too. I'm sick. My throat is killing me right now. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start this and try to do something while I'm listening.
Well, I'm not an expert. I'm not an authority. I'm someone who has been a murderer for almost 20 years.
Can you say how many people might be doing crimes like you were doing?
It would be a guess, but it's not. It's far more than 35. It isn't that impossible in this society. It happens.
Are there more people?
They didn't give up.
How many?
She didn't give up. I did. I came in out of the cold. And what I'm saying is there are some people who prefer it in the cold.
Good people see.
A nice guy.
Did you like Kemper?
I like Kemper.
You were able to appear like an ordinary person, non-threatening to...
I lived as an ordinary person most of my life, even though I was living a parallel and increasingly sick life, other life. One victim let me back in the car. I locked myself out. She opened the door for me. My gun was under the seat. What in the hell am I doing telling you that? Am I a masochist? Am I looking to be tormented further? I'm trying to show you just how awful this got, how commanding.
This is crazy to me that, hey, Holly S. This is Edmond Kemper. He is a serial unaliver from, and this is his interview in 1984, and he's going to go over some of the things he did. Isn't it crazy that he said he locked himself out of the car and the girl let him right back in? That's just crazy to me. Yes, Sarah, the Netflix show Mindhunters was he was in that. Yeah, it wasn't him actually, but it was a guy who played him. He actually started talking to the police and helped them identify ways to find other serial unalivers. Hey, E, thank you for being
These
here.
rages got. I was raging inside. There was just incredible energies, positive and negative, depending on a mood that would trigger one or the other. And outside, I looked troubled at times. Other times I looked moody. Other times perfectly serene. Not very sane. But again, people weren't even aware of what was happening.
In 1972 and 1973,
Hey, Gammy, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it.
series of murders shocked Northern California. College girls began to disappear while hitchhiking. 2 of the victims were picked up from the campus of the University of California at Santa Cruz. That's where Ed Kemper's mother was working as an administrative assistant.
You were involved in the campus because your mother worked there.
Yes. I was also involved in killing co-eds because my mother was associated with college work, college co-eds, women, and had had a very strong and violently outspoken position on men for much of my upbringing. My mother was a sick, angry, hungry, and very sad woman. I hated her, but I wanted to love my mother. And I watched the alcohol increase. I watched her social life drop off. I watched her get bizarre. She had terrible pain from her life, earlier life, her upbringing, a failed marriage with my father. I'm a constant reminder of that failure. I hate to distill it down into...
I want to bring to your attention how intelligent this man is. Like, he's able to understand why he did what he did, why he attacked certain people the way he did, what his hostility was towards his mother, and why he's very well spoken. That I found a couple of these interviews interesting, and I haven't watched all of them, but this man is just extremely intelligent. And again, I do believe he's one of the first people that the FBI started talking to basically understand the mind of a serial unaliver.
Such into one-word realities like that. There's a lot that leads into that happening, but that is what happened. They represented not what my mother was, but what she liked, what she coveted, what was important to her, and I was destroying it.
Why did you actually kill the girls?
My frustration, my inability to communicate socially, sexually. I wasn't impotent, but emotionally I was impotent. I was scared to death of failing in male-female relationships.
Hey, Anderson, thank you for being here.
Knew absolutely nothing about that whole area, even if just sitting down and talking with a young lady. I need to be able to really communicate, and ironically enough, that's why I began picking people up, and I'm picking up young women, and I'm going a little bit farther each time. It's a daring kind of a thing. At first, there wasn't a gun. I'm driving along. We go to a vulnerable place where there aren't people watching, where I could act out, and I say, no, I can't. And then a gun is in the car, hidden. And this craving, this awful, raging, eating feeling inside. I could feel it consuming my insides, this fantastic passion. It was overwhelming me.
So the way he describes it, it's almost like a drug. Like the need to go out and commit a crime, to him was like the need for addicts to go get a hit or whatever it is that they're addicted to, you know? I found that interesting. I only watched the first half of this, and we'll watch the one right before his execution. But I found all this really interesting. Like, he's a very interesting character, or, you know, unaliver, but you know what I mean.
It was like drugs. It was like alcohol. A little isn't enough. At first it is. And as you adjust to that psychologically and physically, you take more and more and more. It's the same process. So it finally came down to the thing of, do I dare bring this gun out? already realizing if that gun comes out, something has to happen. It was going to happen. I didn't see it then, but it was going to happen. I was playing a dangerous game with a loaded gun. It got us all.
On one occasion, Kemper picked up 2 roommates in Berkeley.
Notice there, when he said I was playing a game with a pew-pew, and it got us all. Like, that was telling to me, it got us all. Like, it got him to where he couldn't hold back anymore, and he committed the crimes. He got the girl who was the victim of the crime. I think there was a couple of people. It's really interesting to hear him say it like that. It got us all.
In that first killing in May
Yep.
of '72, when that gun was pulled out, I launched it out. I had it under my leg, out of sight, parallel to my leg in the seat. It was something that had been thought out in fantasy, acted out, felt out hundreds of times before it ever happened.
Kemper drove them at gunpoint to a secluded area near a park. He took one of them into the woods, leaving the second girl tied in the car.
I just gone through a horrible experience with her roommate, stabbing her. And I was in shock because of that. I couldn't believe that it was that way. And I'm walking back there bewildered. I gotta kill her. I can't let her go. She's gonna tell him. Everybody's gonna get me. She sees the blood on my hands. What are you doing? She pulled back and she gasped. And I think, whoa, I don't want her to know what happened. I said, your friend got smart with me. She'd been getting really smart with me a lot, but I never hit her. I killed her, but I didn't hit her. I said, your friend got smart with me and I hit her. I think I broke her nose. You better come help. She's about to die. Why does she have to know that? I couldn't deal with telling her that. And when I attacked her, she didn't at first realize what was happening. It didn't go through. She had very heavy coveralls on. It knocked her right up into the lid of the car, but it didn't pierce the clothing. So it wasn't that swell a knife anyway. I went out and bought a pawn shop, huge knife. And I kept on just mindlessly attacking. She falls back into the trunk.
Sarah says, like Dahmer, he was also pulled over by a cop and he had an unalived person in his trunk.
I just killed a young woman. I slammed down the lid of the trunk. She isn't dead. She's dying. And I panicked. I thought, I just locked the car keys in it because I can't find them in my pocket. Oh my God, I locked them in the trunk. I'm kicking on the trunk lid and yanking on it. Oh no, I don't believe this. I started to run and I tripped over the gun that I'd had in my pants that I had totally forgotten was there. I stopped. I said, stop and think. I collected my wits. Check all your pockets. I picked the gun up. I stuck it back in my pants, now remembering I had one. I checked all my pockets, and there's the keys in the back pocket. I never put...
Bad Girl said that he would drink with the officers at the bar. Like, he hung out with them, which is really interesting to know. I didn't even know that. Eek asked how many people are driving around with unalive people in their cars. That's a good question, and I would be scared to know the answer to that.
Put them in my back pocket.
Everyone makes mistakes, and that's what we have to hope for. The more mistakes they make, the better their chances.
I thought I was pretty slick, and went and tripped all over myself. That first 2 murders, the first 24 hours, there were 3 clear times I should have been busted, and I wasn't, because 3 different individuals or 3 different groups of people got scared and minded their own business and looked the other way.
Some of the people who are committing murders, even as we speak, if they're doing it by themselves and they tell no one about it, they could go on undetected until they decided to stop. And the police wouldn't catch them unless we just happened to roll up on them while they were doing it.
Even after police warnings against hitchhiking and an increased bus schedule on the campus, Kemper had no trouble picking up hitchhikers. Ironically, one warning advised riding only in cars with university stickers. Kemper's car had such a sticker.
My mother worked at the campus, and I had an A sticker on my car.
Wow, that is interesting. So they had heard about it, or, knew that it was dangerous to get rides. And so somebody somebody advised that they only ride in cars with the campus sticker that you get to park your car there. And he had one, and he was the one doing it because his mama worked there. That is crazy. I dropped the link in chat if anybody wants to come up on panel. I'm going to try to pin it, but I don't know if it'll let me or not.
And obvious access day or night to the campus. I was picking up some very lovely young women. You know what we were talking about as we're driving around? Almost as often as not, this guy that's going around doing this stuff. And the second they started talking that, they didn't realize it, but they were getting a free ride. I couldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole, I swear. You know, but they'd be telling me what all about this guy, and they're comparing notes and speculate.
Okay, it's working now, and I was able to pin the comment. I do like YouTube Premium. Let me put that out there. I do like it. It's my trial period. Like, you get a 3-month trial period. And it is nice not to have to go through the commercials. So I don't want to put it down. It was just frustrating me at the moment, and my throat is sore, so that makes it all the worse. Hey, Reese, and thank you for being here.
On what he looks like, how he carries himself, why he's doing this stuff, telling me about it.
So how come they get in a car with somebody at that time?
She judged me not to be that guy. I didn't look like him. It was getting easier to do. I was getting better.
See, and that's the most dangerous thing. He didn't look like a guy that would hurt her. She judged him, and she judged that he was safe and got in that car. And that's a big mistake.
Better at it. I was getting less detectable. I started flaunting that invisibility, severing a human head, 2 of them at night in front of my mother's residence, with her at home, my neighbors at home upstairs, their picture window open, the curtains open, 11 o'clock at night, the lights are on. All they have to do is walk by, look out, and I've had it.
Why did you keep the heads? Why did you cut them off, and why did you keep them?
Something out of my childhood. I could put it on an incident. I mean, my father chopping the heads off of our 2 pet chickens, and my mother insisting that I eat them for dinner. You know, we could say it was something that simple. I don't think it was. Now, my dad heads out back with a hatchet. I got on my bike and I tried to stop it. I remember that. I got on the bike, rode around the block.
That's an
I was
interesting.
crying.
Girl.
I haven't talked about that for a lot of years. I'm sure that may have implemented something, that may have gotten something rolling, but along fantasy lines. But it took a lot of years of development along those lines to really get off.
But how are you able to, in 1 minute, have someone's head in your hands, and very shortly thereafter?
Living through a fantasy, however that would relate to that severed head. And then 5
See, I didn't know he cut the heads off. I wanted to let y'all know that back feed is from this, because keep in mind, this was filmed in 1984.
minutes later, I'd put that away, and there'd be a knock on the door, and I'd put it away and answer the door, and the landlady would be there, and we'd discuss it.
Discuss what?
Reality. Her reality, not mine. Some people go crazy at that point. I felt it. It was one hell of a tweak. I mean, to just flip out and not know where I was. To be walking up the stairs with a camera bag that belonged to a young woman that had her severed head in it. Walking up to my apartment, past a happy young couple coming down the stairs who nodded and smiled at me as they went by. Good evening. And they're going out on a date where I'd love to be going. And I'm aware of both of these realities, and the distance between those two was so dramatic, so amazing, so violent, that really, I could feel the wheels squeaking inside. That was really pulling on it. And I imagine at that point some people break. But I didn't literally go insane. I didn't get lost.
Reese says, "What the hell have you dug up?" I like to go through interviews with killers. I like to watch it because when I was younger, before I took bad paths in lives, I wanted to be the person, like the FBI profiler that would go into prisons and talk to people after they had committed crimes and understand what is different about their mind, what makes them different than the rest of us that could never hurt a fly. Like, what happens in their life or in their mind that makes them different. That's something that really interests me. So Like on the weekends, I try to take it back to interviews with some of these other well-known unalivers and just look at the interviews and discuss them and talk about them.
And all this time, Kemper was able to seem normal. He even hung out at a bar across the street from the courthouse, making friends with policemen, trying to pick up information.
They do bad
They'd buy
girl.
me a beer, I'd buy them a beer. Casual relationships, but I was poking around a little bit trying to find some things out. I knew they wouldn't be privy to hot information, but there were some things that were bothering me, like were there any speculations on how they were.
I didn't know. I thought he was executed. Thank you for the information, Trixie. Trixie said he was denied being released this year. I know they stayed one execution, but I wasn't sure about the other one, which we'll get into that interview next.
Were dying.
Did the cops like you?
Like I said, a friendly nuisance. I got in the way, and it was deliberate. Again, friendly nuisances are dismissed.
How did you get the knowledge to outsmart the police?
Watching television, believe it or not. Joseph Wambaugh, police story. Got some tremendous insights into not just the gimmicks, the actual things, the tidbits that you would pick up from their procedures, but the mechanics behind that, the logic behind it. Was I would not allow myself to walk into even a potential trap of behavior. And one of those was talking about those crimes too much to people, initiating conversations about that.
There was a memorial service for 2 of the victims.
Yes,
Were you tempted to go?
yes.
But
I'd seen one too many episodes of one too many crime shows where that is one of the available resources for clues. Tracking down the attenders, one man taking pictures of the people there to eliminate as potential suspects.
some police department, now they actually came to your house to pick up a handgun.
Sheriff's representative.
That's interesting that he was one of those people that would go back and visit the memorial service for his victim. I've never understood that. Like some people, some unalivers like have to be there. Like unfortunately, they get off on it, on seeing people. I don't know if it's like seeing the people upset about what you did or what it is. It's like extremely dangerous and stupid, in my opinion, if you did something like that to go to the memorial service. But some of them, like, they'll watch from behind. And it's interesting that he said he was going to go, but there was just too many people.
Representatives. One of the detectives was upset because he heard I had a .44 Magnum pistol and was a convicted man. He came to take the gun away, and it was on he and his sergeant detective. They were staking out the wrong house. It was across the street, and I'm playing around with the car, standing next to the gun in the trunk. They come over and ask me about, excuse me, sir, do you know who lives in this house across the street here? Well, that house was 609 Harriet. You crossed back over to this side into 609 Ord, and they were looking for me and didn't even know that. See what I mean? Bad news. Well, at any rate, we walk into the house to have them ask my mother about this other house, and I'm saying, hey, which 609 are you looking for? And they said, are you Ed Kemper? Yes. And it goes on. And I needed to find out what they were looking for, the murder weapon, the .22 automatic, or the .44 Magnum. And I don't want to advertise that I've got a whole bunch of guns. So I made a comment to divine between the two. And I said, yes, quite a little gun, isn't it? And he retorted, a .44 Magnum, I hope so. And I said, okay.
Did you catch how he just played the police there? That's interesting. By asking a question like that, and the officer just walked right into it and answered his question without even realizing it. Hey, Content Angel, thank you so much for being here.
Okay, because that loaded .22 was under the front seat and guaranteed me an arrest right on the spot. And 44 was in the trunk. I forgot that. I took them in the house. We went into my bedroom, and the closet doors open, and I have a high-powered rifle with a scope on it.
You had some other stuff in the house too, yes?
Yeah. I had the personal effects and identification of the last 2 co-eds that had been murdered about 2 months before, right next to the guns in the closet, in a box.
Could he have seen it?
No, but when he arrested me for having all those guns and went through the rest of the closet looking to see if there were any pistols or anything else, he couldn't have helped notice a purse, a book bag, and co-ed ID inside of those belonging to their two latest murder victims. I back up and said, "Oh, excuse me. I just remembered." So, and instantly he responds to what I'm saying. My hand moves. Back we go outside, and he's still thinking, "Boy, this is a really nice and helpful guy here."
Some of these people do what you and I do to become better killers. They practice their trade.
Didn't Kemper stop himself toward the end of his career?
Kemper says he did. He says he could have gone on. He said he had fantasies of killing dozens more people, of leaving a trail of bodies across the country, and at one point he just got on the telephone and turned himself in. He said it was time for the killing to stop. In his case, he said publicly that it was his mother that he was killing all along, and when he killed his mother, that was the end. It's a very deep psychological observation from himself, but it may be very accurate.
I agree with that statement. It is how it amazes me that this man is so intellectual that he knew every single victim in his mind was his mother. And so at the end, when he did that thing to his mother, it was over and he turned himself in for it. Like, I've never heard of that before. And I don't know that it's happened since. Like, not the, like, a lot of unalivers are trying to unalive people because they want to unalive their mother or their father or their daughter or their whatever. But, like, then to go turn yourself in, that's insane. He is a master manipulator, true crime addict.
It was springtime. It was April. And for 2 months I hadn't killed. And I said, it's not going to happen to any more girls. It's got to stay between me and my mother. And I can't get away from her. We're still fighting. She's still belittling me. I'm like a puppet on a string, and I entertain her. She knows all my buttons, and I dance like a puppet with that pain. And it had even gotten physical, to where I had physically grabbed her and thrown her onto her bed, trying to emphasize a point that I was threatening to kill her. So here I pick up these two young ladies in Berkeley on Ashby Avenue. One has flowers in her hand, petite little dolls. They're in granny dresses, and they're hitchhiking, a couple of real experts. I want to see how together I am, if I can resist this temptation.
You going to Walnut Creek? Great.
And they get in my car. They want to go one way. I know they need to go the other. If they go the way they're insisting on, we're headed right back out to where the first two co-eds were murdered. And I'm saying to myself, oh my God, all I got to do is relax, and they'll take me to their death. I've got the gun in the car, the same one I've been doing it with. I insisted. As gently as I could, I took them where they needed to go, to their college.
Thanks a lot.
That was 1 week before I murdered my mother. I said, she's got to die. And I've got to die, or girls like that are going to die. And that's when I decided I'm going to murder my mother. I knew a week before she died, I was going to kill her. And she went out to a party, she got soused, she came home, went to sleep. I was woken up by that, came out. I walked up to her bed. She's laying there reading a paperback. As many thousands of nights before. And she said, oh, I suppose you're going to want to sit up all night and talk now. Shit. And I looked at her, I said, no. I said, good night. And I knew
It's hard to see him get emotional. Like, I'm trying to figure out if he's manipulating or being real. And I think he's being real.
I was going to kill her. You know? And I'm so cold, it's so hard. And that's the first time in 10 years I've looked at it that way. I mean, that intensely, that honestly. It hurts. Because I'm not a lizard, I'm not from under a rock. I came out of her vagina. See? I came out of my mother. And in a rage, I went right back in. For 7 years, she said, I haven't had sex with a man because of you. My murderous son is one of our arguments. I cut off her head, and And I humiliated her corpse. I said, there, you know, a 6 young woman dead because of the way she raises her son and the way her son is raised, the way he grows up. And what's her closing words? I suppose you want to sit up all night and talk. God, I wish I had.
That is impactful. Hello Kitty, thank you so much for being here. Hello Kitty says many criminals want to see the result of their actions. Arsonists usually come back to watch the fire burn and the aftermath. Yes, that's very true. A couple of people had stated that in the comment section. Thank you for being here, and thank you for telling us that. That was an impactful testimony, or recalling of the crime there.
Your grandmother and her daughter-in-law, your mother, were two women very important in your life, and you killed them both. Could you say what they were like that led them to the same fate?
Same thing that kept them from ever being friends. They were both aggressive, matriarchal women. They'd been the daughters of strong matriarchal women. I still loved my mother, and it's hard for somebody to comprehend that you murder your mother through love. It isn't a rational process. It's a very painful process. It isn't rational, and I've got to still live with that.
Why did you wind up giving yourself up?
It had to stop. It had to stop. Once my mother was dead, there's almost a cathartic process at that point. I got physically ill right then when she died, when I murdered her. And once she was dead, there was no way I could back out. I had backed down from giving up 1,000 times. You know, I used to get drunk and go sit out in front of the sheriff's department in a parking lot across the street on one of those old concrete parking berms. And I just sit there and say, no, I still can't. The clanging doors, I could still hear them. No, because it'll never open again. You know, so I rationalized that to give up would be insane. To give up would be crazy. I'd be giving away my freedom, and I don't need to. But I look back on that and wish I had earlier when I was saying those things to myself. The people who were later dead wouldn't be. The regret that came later would have not had to be. Those people, not things, those people would still be with their families, with their loved ones. They would have their own families. If I had had the courage to make that decision, instead of painting myself into the corner.
Where might you be if you'd never...
That's interesting. Like, now he's showing sympathy for his victims, stating that they would be with their family if he had done what he did to his mother first, realized what he was doing and gotten some control. I mean, this is a really intriguing interview from a serial unaliver.
Never given in to the impulse to murder.
Where might I be? If my parole had been successful, I believe I'd be married, I'd have children, I'd be heading toward my first grandchildren.
So that was the end of the 1984 interview. We're going to look at one from 1991, but I wanted to show you, I don't think it's that. It's this one. It's a 20. Hold on a minute. It's going to play this.
And I went off the deep end.
Ed Kemper has been serving
Okay,
a life
this is going to be from 3 years before, but this one's only 6 minutes, and then we'll watch a 20-second clip, and then we'll go to 1991.
sentence in this California prison since 1973, when, at the age of 24, he murdered his mother, then called police and confessed to having dismembered college co-eds for 2 years, as well as cannibalizing and raping their headless bodies.
When someone abandons himself to being...
Sorry, there is a trigger warning scrolling across the bottom of my screen. That's giving us a little bit more insight to actually what he did with the people after he unalived them.
A victim. He's going to have to be one.
He's
With an IQ of 136, Kemper is now the prison's best reader of books for the blind.
I'm saying I'd wanted to kill my mother since I was 8 years old, and I'm not proud of that. It started with surrogates at a non-human level. Physical objects, my possessions, other people's, destruction of things that are cared about. And then it's destruction of things that are living on a lower level, small animals, insects, animals, and then finally people.
And that's how they start. It's destruction of things that you care about. Then it's destruction of smaller animals, and then it's destruction of people. I paused it to say, hey, Corey, and thank you so much for being here.
It started coming to a head again, so I went back down. I ran away back down there. And then a month later, I'm up living with my grandparents in the mountains, and 10 months later, I murdered them. It made it worse to be on top of a mountain. I was literally on top of a mountain when it happened. And I sensed everybody in the world just stopping what they were doing, turning around, saw what I did, and are coming to get me. And I knew I was paranoid at that moment. I knew anybody that came up there and gave me a funny look or a fishy eye or quizzical look, I'd have blown their brains out thinking they were coming to get me. And if it had been in a city, I would have been a mass murderer at age 15. I would have killed until they gunned me down. I wouldn't have been able to reason my way out of it. I was scared to death, and I was violent. I felt my back hit that wall. I was the rabbit that always ran, that always backed away, always burned his bridges. Suddenly there weren't any more, and my back hit that wall, and I came out screaming and kicking and shooting.
He was released to the one person that authorities at the state mental hospital recommended he never see again.
I got paroled to my mother. Atascadero decided that I didn't never need to talk to her again at all. Don't give her a Christmas present. Leave her alone. She got a pound of flesh out of you. I wasn't sniveling about my mother to them. I didn't like to hear what they had to say about her. She went through 3 husbands like a hot knife through butter. 4 months after I was out, I was back into the fantasy.
I'm sitting here talking away and I'm muted. I sincerely apologize for that. I said, what a comparison. He just said that she went through 3 husbands like a hot knife through butter. I was like, what a comparison. My goodness. And I had paused the chat for a second on my end so I could talk about these 2 comments. Cozy said, allegedly speculating we should do David Berkowitz too. He got saved in prison, and the son of Sam wasn't just one person. Yes, I debated, I am going to do him, and I debated whether to do it today, but I decided not to. I decided we go ahead and watch him because I had been looking into the Edmond Kemper interviews earlier, and I wanted to finish watching them, but I wanted to wait and do it with you guys. Eek said, I can't even kill flies without cringing. Me either. Me either.
Bag. My first date was an absolute disaster. Wasn't her fault, you know, and I didn't blame her even then. I'm saying it was a terrible tragedy, but boy, she didn't ever talk to me again. It was awful. It wasn't sexual or grabbing at her. I was just such a dork, taking her to a John Wayne movie and Denny's. It's terrible. I'd never been on a date at 16. That was cool, you know. I'd never been on a date, you know. I was locked up since I was 15. But I can't tell her that. Oh, gee, you don't mind me. You know, she kind of got hung up on my looks or whatever. You know, I mean, she's a gorgeous young lady, pure class, and she saw something there that I guess wasn't there, and boy, she found out quick.
Taking elaborate precautions.
Hey, Zio, and thank you for being here.
He drove around universities and picked up hitchhiking co-eds while wearing these glasses.
Yeah. These are the ones. Now, would you get in the car with this man? Huh?
I like this interview. This is more like he's more relaxed and open.
State has made me much more credible.
What do you guys think? Would you have gotten into a car with that guy or a guy that looked like that? You think you'd take a ride from him if you were hitchhiking back in, 1974? He said the state made him look so much more credible.
State has made me much more credible as a human being.
While his mother worked at the university.
Do y'all think that y'all would have gotten that car with him went back? You got to think about the time period. Everybody hitchhiked back then.
Kemper buried the mutilated bodies in the mountains and took the severed heads home. Then he slept with their heads for days and finally went looking for more.
you could see how tall he is, like standing beside those officers. You got to think those officers are, normal height. And you can see how much taller he is than them. He was a monster of a man. He was tall, all of that.
That I was losing a grasp on something that was too violent to keep inside forever. As I'm sitting there with a severed head in my hand, talking to it, or looking at it, and I'm about to go crazy, literally. I'm about to go completely flywheel loose and just fall apart. I say, wow, this is insane. And then I told myself, no, it isn't. You're saying that, and that makes it not insane. I said, I'm sane, and I'm looking at a severed... I said, well, wait a minute. I see old paintings and drawings of Viking heroes talking to severed heads and taking them to parties, old enemies in leather bags. Part of our heritage. This is me back then in 1972 and 73. Unable to live with the fact that I just stabbed to death and cut the throat of an innocent young woman. Innocent in the sense that she did not plan on that happening. She didn't do anything specifically for that to happen to her. Yet she was a very active participant in her own death. And in my memory of that, she was 19 years old, and her roommate in the trunk who died right after that was 18. I didn't go hog wild and totally limp. What I'm saying is I found myself doing things in an attempt to make things fit together inside. I was doing sexual probings and things. I mean, in the sense of striking out and reaching out and grabbing and pulling to me, but appalled at the sense that it wasn't working. That isn't the way it's supposed to be. It isn't the way I want it. See what I'm saying? And yet during that time, I become engaged to someone who's young and is beautiful and very much the same advantages and very much the same upbringing and Disneyland values. And she's very much the reason I surrendered. I picked up two girls who were so much like the first two, it was unbelievable. Almost identical circumstances. And I let them go. Everything went towards killing them, and I didn't. But I'm saying, wow, it's uncanny. It was almost like it was meant to be that way. And I said, wow, this got to stop. And I let them out. They never even knew what was going on. I let them out. I would have gotten away with those two being murdered. I said, no, it's got to stop. And a week later, I murdered my mother. Went back to Santa Cruz and killed her.
He killed her with a hammer in her sleep, cut off her head and hands, but then put her vocal cords in the garbage disposal and threw darts at her severed head.
I am an American.
The whole and again, trigger warning, throwing her vocal cords in the garbage disposal. Like, that's how angry he was with her speaking. Because you think your vocal cords, that's how you speak. That's how you say things. He was so angry with the things that she said to him that he threw her vocal cords in the garbage disposal. Like, that is some straight hostility right there.
And I killed Americans. I am a human being, and I killed human beings. And I did it in my society.
Okay. I'm going to go, the little clip I wanted to show you was in that interview. It was where it was the little clip I wanted to show you was where he put his glasses on and was like, would you get in a car with me? So we'll watch this one's going to be from 1991. So it's going to be, okay, the first one we watched was in 1984, and the one we just watched was in 1981. So this is going to be the full interview or extended interview. Let's see, 7 years after the first interview we watched. This is 10 years after the one we just watched and 7 years after the first one we watched. It was cozy. Everything he did was really symbolic. It really was. Yeah, he did make her hush real quick. Yes, Hello Kitty says, remember to follow your intuition, friends. Please. If you got a gut feeling about something, don't do it. Okay. So let's see. He's going to come in right here. I'm going to unmute it. Hello Kitty says she hit the thumbs up. Thank you so much for that. I try not to ask you guys, but if you wouldn't mind, or if you're watching the replay, or if you're talking and you're here now hanging out, please consider hitting the thumbs up so we get out into the algorithm for more people. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Hi, I'm Stefan Bourgois.
I guess I didn't even ask him that. He just proffered the information that he wouldn't hesitate.
I'm going to put on English subtitles because it is a little hard to hear. And there's different kind of subtitles down there. Keep in mind that this audio and video footage is from 1991, so it's going to be a little difficult.
Hesitate a second to pull the lever on any serial killer, right? And I'm thinking, gee, he just killed me. You know? If you stop and think about it, if I were to have been executed in a timely fashion, they would have had absolutely no input, and they'd be scratching their heads about what makes a serial murderer tick. Other than the experts all jumping up to give their opinions, which you've been doing for a lot of years, and unfortunately, they don't hit too well. They don't have too good of a track record.
So what he's referencing is if he had been executed when he was supposed to be executed, then he would have never got the chance to talk to the FBI. And I know that Ted Bundy helped them, but I think he's one of the more pivotal people that helped them understand how the mind of a serial unaliver works. So I'm really glad that they were able to talk to him. I think that might be what kept him from getting executed the first time, but I could be wrong about that.
I'm not sure whose name. We need to put one specific name down here. Who should we? You feel me?
That would include serial killer, obviously.
Yeah, but obviously very few of them could if there was only 35 serial killers.
No, they're talking about close to 100 right now.
I was saying that 10 years ago.
True crime. No, you're not blocked, but for whatever reason, that's the first comment I've seen of yours in a minute. We don't block people over here. Like, you'd have to be really, really extremely rude to get blocked. I don't block people because I like to hear differing thoughts and opinions. So nobody would block you, but I don't know if you said something else because that's the first thing I've seen in a minute. I don't know if it's a YouTube issue or sometimes if you say certain words, it'll knock your comment out. I don't know.
That wasn't John.
Because you also have to include. No, I'm saying and his cohorts.
Yeah.
They were saying as a unit. The PSU was saying, and having come from that genre, in the having been locked up and through the dregs. And knowing some of those characters and watching how easy it was for me to stumble into what I did, I didn't go into it.
True crime, try to reword what you were trying to say. Like if it had something in it that could have been picked up by AI, that could have been bad. Try to reword it or something and try again. Or you can try the regular comment again.
Pre-planned or anything, but I couldn't believe that was a unique act. You know, that no one else could find that out. And that's just one avenue into it. Because, you know, while a lot of people can stereotype the type of criminal that a serial killer would be, society has to loosen up its belt a bit and admit that jailers, like at the Tucker farm down in Arkansas, who get tired of recalcitrant troublemaker inmates, take them out back and kill them and bury them, are serial killers. Different motive. But, so, you know, it's a wide range of activities that get included in.
I'm sorry to keep pausing it, but excuse me, did he just say jailers are taking troubled inmates out back and pulling an old yeller? I mean, is that what they were doing back in 1991? Good Lord.
Something like that. They've had that 100 years ago in the Old West, where someone would set up a boarding house and people who came by never left. Whole families, individual travelers, would go on for years before they'd get discovered. But it's things I've read about.
Yeah, you had H.H. Holmes also in the 1890s stuff. Yeah,
Poisoners, people like that. Are we starting our interview or?
No, those
He's like, what are we doing here? Can we get on with it?
Oh, yes, I'm doing my time and I'm miserable. And they say, good. You know, that's not what it's about.
Huh?
Oh, we're getting serious now. I can tell.
The tape is rolling. Could you tell us how long you've been imprisoned?
Excuse me. This month is 18 years that I've actually been in prison.
What were you convicted of?
8 counts of first-degree murder.
What was your sentence?
7 years to life. CC, that's called concurrent. It means all the sentences run at the same time.
That means they run consecutively?
Oh, no, that's the opposite of consecutive.
Yeah.
Consecutive would be...
Eek, you didn't block him, did you? True crime, I see you said that. It must be what I'm saying. It wasn't bad what I said. Sometimes AI will pick up on things that like and block stuff that you're not even supposed to block. My YouTube just now, it was like not even showing that I was live. If I would check it from my phone or anywhere else but StreamYard, it was saying that I wasn't even live, and it was doing that yesterday, and it was aggravating because I was trying to do something in chat, like to pin a comment or whatever, to pin the StreamYard link like I did. It wouldn't let me because I was saying that I wasn't live, and it wouldn't let me click on it. So it's something to do with YouTube, I would think.
Be one at a time, and of course you can't serve multiple life sentences, but there was some question before my case that whether on the legality of that. So when my case went through, the judge sentenced me to 1 term of 7 to life, which at that time was the maximum non-death penalty, and all to run concurrent at the same time.
In considering your crimes and crimes done by other serial killers, what do you think society should do in generally with serial killers?
Do with them?
Yes.
It's a difficult question to answer from my point of view because I'm obviously an involved subject. So it would, any answer I would give that would be other than the death penalty would sound very self-serving. I look at people who on the surface don't have any redeeming qualities whatsoever. They don't do anything or say anything or behave in any way that would make your average person want to save their life, want to keep them alive and feed them and house them and clothe them for decades. But when I first came to prison, I had much the same attitude. It was a very defensive attitude, very self-preservative attitude, because those immediately about me were very much set on destructive attitudes toward me. So I put up screens, so to speak, to screen out those feelings. Excuse me, and those reactions to me. I'm driving your sound lady crazy here. Over.
Also, when you feel you need to redo an answer, you can do it. You know, it's no
I
problem.
don't have any problem with that.
I apologize for it cutting out like that. I don't know. Maybe it's just because it was from 1991. Maybe they were doing it live and going to commercial. I don't know what that's about. I apologize, but I think it was interesting for him to ask him what he thinks society should do to serial unalivers. That's a great question to ask somebody who has done that, even though he'd be biased. Hey, Toxic Orchid, thank you so much for being here.
I understand.
Yeah.
The problems involved. I had to do a whole interview over once because the lady wouldn't check her audio tape recorder. I kept saying, you better check it and make sure it works first. Oh, I'm sure it works. It works. 2 hours later, we're doing it all over again. She was ready to cry, I'm telling you. I guess I could have, but that was where the pen was mightier than the sword, right? The only interview I did back at the time of my case. This is just a little anecdote for you here. But I went through the whole investigation, the whole trial, no interviews with the media, right? And then this one woman who had treated me pretty fairly in the media, she was in this drove or driven toward beating me with the newspapers. She tried to do a more in-depth piece around it. And so I did an interview with her before I went to prison. It was the day I was sentenced, and I was waiting for the car to prison here. And actually, wait a minute, excuse me. That was where I gave her the interview. Okay.
Toxic says this guy makes my skin crawl. Really? Tell me why. I find him really interesting and very intellectual. I'm not idolizing him. I think what he did to those girls is wrong, and I want to remember their families and say a prayer for them today. But tell me why he makes your skin crawl. That's really interesting.
Talked to her just briefly. She came, she was hovering around. I was at the jury room, the courthouse, talking to my lawyer. He hadn't shown up yet. She was up there talking to the officer that was with me. And we all just had I said, my lawyer does not want me talking to the media at all. So quick, I see him coming way down the hall. I said, let's set up a little scenario and act like I'm giving this really incriminating interview that screws everything up, right? And he kind of laughed because it was breaking the tension in the room, you know. So we set up this little scenario, and she's busily acting like she's writing, and I'm talking about all of this harebrained stuff that relates to the case and feelings, and he just starts turning bright red as he gets within hearing range. He's like a big clown, got this huge forehead, hair standing out all over, and now he turns bright red. And he says, "Matter, no wet hand." And he stomps into the room and slams his briefcase on the desk, and we all start laughing, and he gets really mad. I said, "What are you laughing about?" I said, "This is a setup just for you." I said, "I'm not doing any interviews."
Toxic said, "Oh yeah, he's smart, but he's telling us what we want to hear, not because he's a nice guy." Interesting, and you're right. I'm sure he is. Thank you for sharing that.
But later on, I gave her an interview because she treated me so fairly up to that point, and also had she gave me a pen that day. It was a cast aluminum ballpoint pen, and I took it back to my high security jail cell up in Redwood City. I was really slammed down tight. I'm in a 2-man cell by myself. They have a camera on me 24 hours a day, a monitor, videotape monitor. The lights are on. It's 2 sets of these 4-footers here. And it's as bright as day all day long, all night long, 24 hours a day.
Is there a Brittany in here? I'm just asking. I'm hoping I didn't miss somebody. Is somebody named Brittany in here? If there is, hi. I'm sorry if I can't see your comment.
And I was there for 5 months. And I brought this pen back in. I smuggled it in with me. And I get strip shook leaving the cell. I get strip shook coming back in. And I brought this pen in, and it got in with my legal papers. And a few months later, in the middle of the trial, I smashed the pen on the floor with my boot, sharpened it, got a sharp edge on the metal, and slashed my wrist. And was bleeding all over the place. And it was very messy and very exciting, and everybody was dragging me off to the hospital, get sewed up and all of that. And I got maced, shot up with industrial strength bottle of mace. They had about a quart of it, and they just gassed me with that whole thing and dragged me off to the hospital. And I made a quippy comment. I don't think the police translated it properly for the media because they missed it. They love, how they love to get into puns on broadcast television. They love these little verbal puns and plays with words. And the pen is mightier than the sword. I turned the pen into a sword and cut myself. Both times I attempted suicide, I did it with a pen or parts of a pen. And I thought that was kind of interesting, but the media never picked up on that. They were too busy being serious. But at any rate,
at one point,
once in my life, I could see every aspect of my life, my crimes.
There might not have been a Brittany. She might have been. I don't know. I'm not Brittany. If you thought I was, but I'm not. That's not my name. But if you were talking to me, okay, cool. I'm glad. But yeah, I'm not Brittany.
Who I was, how I really felt about things, without any defensive or protective accoutrements, was all gone.
Oh, you're good, true crime.
It was fascinating to me. I was semi-conscious. Actually, I was conscious. I just, I couldn't get up and move around a lot. And at the end of the 2 hours, I didn't want to stop. I wanted to keep on with this. I hadn't gotten to the crimes themselves, the current set of crimes, but I was kind of oriented around other things related to my life. And I asked to continue on. The doctor didn't want to, so I insisted. So they were using an IV, and they shot me up with another 2-hour batch of this stuff. And as soon as he was done with what he wanted to do, he got up and left. He had an appointment. It had gone longer than he planned on it. He had to leave. My lawyer had to go. So I'm stuck with these 2 deputies and a registered nurse watching me until I come down off of this stuff. Well, when the doctor left, he decided to give me a shot of medicine to snap me out of this, is the way he put it. And I asked him what it was, and he said it was methadone, hospital-grade methadone, speed. And I've asked doctors since then, both medical doctors and psychiatrists, if that was an appropriate action, and they said absolutely not. They should have let me sleep it off.
That is interesting, hearing him talk about this medical thing that he had going on. Yeah, I think Toxic was saying that it's a narcissistic trait, and it could be like the reason he's talking to us and being so forthcoming. I think it is. I think that definitely has something to do with it for sure.
Let it course through my body and let it go away. By amplifying with the methadone, it is suggested that the doctor knew full well it would put me through hell. It amplified everything I was feeling. It got me really drove. And for 2 days after that, they were trying to scrape me off the ceiling. They couldn't even talk to me. I was raving. I was ranting. They had to put me in a strip cell. I wouldn't go back to my regular cell. I refused because there was television available there. I had a canteen. I had some food items in my house. I wouldn't accept it. And I went to a strip cell 2 cells down where all I had was a mattress over a hole in the floor. And I was just on and on 24 hours a day. The convicts and the criminals in the back that were locked up with me, they were in the tank. I mean, we were talking very casually about different things and fairly good relationships. And I put them all on what we call Front Street. I exposed all of them to all of the negative sides of our relationships and called them all kinds of cowards and punks and this and that and the other because they were even talking to me. And that was when I made the statement that I should be hung upside down on the bars and beaten daily, right, for what I did. Because under the influence of those drugs, I was seeing what I did through other people's eyes, not through mine. I won't say through other specific person's eyes, but as...
That is really interesting. So evidently this doctor gave him this medication knowing that he would have a bad reaction. He's saying basically that the doctor did it on purpose. And through the delirium of this drug while he was on it and coming down, he's seeing his crimes through other people's eyes, through the victim's eyes. That would be a crazy thing to deal. Like, think about like if you've ever taken mushrooms and then you've done these things and then seeing it like that, that would be horrible.
As someone else would view it, pure horror. Someone that had nothing to do with violence in their life would see it. I was completely unprotected, and that was an awful experience. And within hours of coming down off of that stuff, 2 days later, you know, I wasn't making comments like that. The defenses were back in place. They were a bit ruffled. It had been an eye-opening experience because it gave me something I'll never forget, you know, some perspectives on my case that I'll never forget, some anxieties on my case I'll never forget. And all I can give you to gauge it by is that when I went into that hospital, the nurse came out, and she was the typical battle axe professional nurse, been on the job 20 years, great woman with the wheelchair, severe stern face, and she's looking at me with razor blades. She could just dice me up in a second without thinking about it. She's really having fits. You know, I'm in the chair, she wheels me inside. 5 hours later when I come out of there, you know, she's wheeling me out. And as I'm getting into the car, I got this tortured look on my face. I've been crying, I've been tearing at myself. And she looks at me with this very compassionate look and she says, good luck. Because she got a good look at what was really inside. That she was already aware of the evil I was capable of and the horror that had happened in the case. And now she saw a lot of my real feelings. And her knowledge of chemicals and medicine and treatments and all of that, she knew I wasn't faking.
Interesting. Could you imagine being that nurse? Abella says, AS, remember, he could be like bullshit everything. I don't know if I trust him too much. They said he loved to hear himself talk. So yeah, I wouldn't take everything he said as biblical fact. I would take it with a grain of salt, but I know he gave a lot of insight on things. Hey, Doc Bones, it's so good to see you here again.
And from her, I got a good luck, you know, and she was serious. Never seen her since. But then ironically, the deputies that were stuck with me that day, trying to wait out this fit I was having, this rage, because they hadn't anticipated that. But they just tried to figure, well, we'll keep, he's so outraged right now, he's so drove. Let's just keep him here until he calms down a bit, and we'll take him back to jail. But I didn't calm down. It just kept going on and on and on and on. And at one point, I asked the deputies to handcuff me to the rails of the bed because I was afraid I would rip my eyes out. I was really acting up. And he had known me well enough for a few months. He didn't want to do that. He says, "Oh, come on, Ed, that's calling him by my first name." He says, "That's not really necessary, is it?" And I said, "Man, you better put him on, or I'm going to tear that goddamn gun belt off of you and blast you. I might beat you to death with it." So he comes over with the cuffs. He's a little
Dang. Could you imagine being that cop? And this guy, this 7 foot, y'all said how tall he is, like giant of a man that has committed unalivings and cannibalism and did horrible things with corpses, and you know that. And he's like, "You need to handcuff my hands to this bed right now." And you're like, I think you're okay. And he's like, "No, I'm going to take your gun and beat you with it. And I might actually shoot you. You better do it." I think I'd be doing it. 6'9", Cozy said. Yes. Could you imagine? Oh my goodness. That's scary.
offended by that. So he comes over with the cuffs. He starts to put them on my wrist, and I just went through some kind of incredible convulsion. I just yanked him clear across the bed, you know, because I was in and out and yanking like this. And he had the other hand cuffed already. He's putting cuff on here, and I yanked him across the bed, and zing, off he goes. He's hanging onto this handcuff. And at that point, he cuffed me up real quick, finish. I already had leg irons down at the foot of the bed. And I just was yanking those rails up and down with my wrists, and that's very painful.
Toxic said, yeah, he's full of poop for the most part. He's spinning a tail. He had no remorse for his crime. See how he gets excited when he tells this part. And he is animated. He is obviously excited.
Painful with handcuffs on. You know, these stainless steel rails, just up and down, yanking them and trying to pull them in. And we went like that for a few hours, and finally they said, "We got to get him back to jail. He's not going to change in the near future."
In general, people see serial killers as one category, but there are actually 7 different types of serial killers. Would you care
Several or 7?
No, several.
Several types.
Would you care to explain us what types of different serial killers?
To be honest with you, I couldn't really tell you. Because the categorization process, as you know, is back east with the behavioral sciences unit. When I was locked up originally, they called it mass murderer. Anybody who killed more than 2 or 3 people was a mass murderer. And whether it was all at one place or over an extended period of time. And then in the early 80s, they came up with this differentiation called serial killing, which was living 2 lives, basically. If one orients to the negative side of that living, he would say this person was living a cover life that was wrapped around doing those crimes, and which couldn't be.
That's an interesting definition for the term serial unaliver. Like, I would think that it was somebody who, I think it is somebody who has committed more than one unaliving, not somebody that's necessarily living 2 lives. But I could be wrong.
Be very realistic. Someone doesn't live their life to murder people. Their life was not set for that from birth. From my point of view, what I saw was there was a great hole in my life. There was a lot missing from my life, and it didn't necessarily mean feelings. It meant I had walled off this emptiness in my life. Okay, I had an upbringing that was some have called dysfunctional. Okay, parents divorced when I was
Cozy, I'm going to take it back. We're at 1946. I'll take it to 1846 or 1805. He's going to say the definition of a serial unaliver And I think he describes it as somebody living 2 lives, which I thought it meant you committed more than one unaliving.
And finally, they said, we got to get him back to jail. He's not going to change in the near future.
All right, so
In general, people see
I took it back. So this is where he's going to talk about it.
serial killers as one category, but there are actually 7 different types of serial killers. Would you care
Several
to,
or 7?
No, several.
Several types.
Would you care to explain us what types of different serial killers?
To be honest with you, I couldn't really tell you. Because the categorization process, as you know, is back east with the behavioral sciences unit. When I was locked up originally, they called it mass murderer. Anybody who killed more than 2 or 3 people was a mass murderer. And whether it was all at one place or over an extended period of time. And then in the early 80s, they came up with this differentiation called serial killing, which was living 2 lives, basically. If one orients to the negative side of that living, he would say this person was living a cover life that was wrapped around doing those crimes, and which couldn't be very realistic. Someone doesn't live their life to murder people. Their life was not set for that from birth. From my point of view, what I saw was there was a great hole in my life. There was a lot missing from my life, and it didn't necessarily mean feelings. It meant I had walled off this emptiness in my life. Okay, I had an upbringing that was some have called dysfunctional. Okay, parents divorced when I was young. My mother started drinking heavily. She was working to raise 3 kids. We were not being cooperative about it. She drank more. She punished us harder, probably out of desperation. So character sets were being developed at that point. Rather than me going to Boy Scouts and getting achievement badges, I was not going to Boy Scouts and not getting achievement badges. I was finding devious ways to get around the rules of the home. Because
Rubber Ramada Room looked up the definition for us of a serial unaliver and stated Uncle Google says someone who murders multiple people over a period of time in separate events, which is interesting. That's what I thought. So maybe the definition, though, has changed since 1991. Hey,
the whole home life, I watched it deteriorate from what typical kids on the block were doing.
Hey, Mayla's mom, thank you. Thank you so much for being here. So, been watching from the bushes, but wanted to say like and subscribe. I really like your channel. Oh, thank you. You're so sweet. Thank you.
Coming home from school that I didn't like anyway. And ironically, I have a high IQ. I didn't know that till I was locked up the first time for murder. I always thought I was a little missing up here, a little short. Because I was always called stupid, I was called slow, don't you think when you do things? That was the problem. I wasn't thinking when I did things. I just did by rote, I did by memory, I did by example. And I had absolutely no faith in myself at all. I had no interaction going on in my own mind. I was not a thinker. I was not an individual. I had a teacher in the 9th grade who changed all that. He made me think. He would not tolerate my not thinking. He was an art teacher. And it was a devastating experience for me because there were gears in my head that were just rusty and they were barely moving or not at all. And that's when I found out that's what the state of my mind's functioning was. I didn't think. To the point of he points at a stapler on his desk and says, "What does that say?" And I looked at it, I said, "Silver line." He says, "Look again." And he's raving at me. And I look and it said swing line. All I had to do was look at it and read it. But I glanced at it and threw it back at him out of panic. So he made me think, and he gave me puzzles to work out in school in my class where I had to resolve these to continue on with the class. I had to think. I had to use abstracts. And after that started, that became fascinating to me. So I got more and more involved in thinking and about my surroundings and things like that. But by then I was locked up.
That's really interesting, that comparison. And I actually might take that and use it. I'm thinking because, like, you know, I homeschool the kids. And that's an issue, like getting them to actually think and not just do, like he said, like the example with the stapler. And I'm wondering if maybe I should give them some of the puzzles where you have to really think about things before we start school. That's a really non-medicinal way to try to help with like ADHD and things like that. I like that. And I like to take it back to the old way of doing things. I saw somebody come in real quick. Let me say hey to you before I push play. Mello's arrest warrant. Hey, thank you for being here. Mello says he gives me the creeps. Oh, really? Tell me why. I find him fascinating. Tell me why he gives you the creeps.
But what was your relationship with your sister?
Which one? I have two.
Yes, the one you was playing strange games of death with her, with one
My
of your
younger
sisters.
sister, yeah. My older sister was 5 years older than me, so she was off with her friends and in a distant relationship. My younger sister's 2 years younger, and I developed some morbid games. My life had started going that way at about 8. We lived in a house where there was a basement. Some people think there was a trap door on that basement. That's not so. That was a different house. It was a walk-in basement, but it was in Montana. It was a full basement.
So this is where he's probably going to talk about his mom putting him in the basement. Cozy, you're good, love. Thank you for being here.
It had granite walls, hewn wood floorboards, and it looked like some old dungeon out of a castle or something. I was 8 years old, 7.5, 8 years old, and then I was very susceptible. My imagination was very livid. And there was an old furnace in the basement that had been converted from burning coal to burning, and coal and wood to burning gas.
Okay, Mello.
And that was, it had a central heating system with your typical radiators. And if you've ever lived in a home like that, you know, the binging, the clang, the pop, the rattles, the weird sounds in the night that can be spooky to a kid.
Hey, Angela, thank you so much for being here.
Well, at a certain time of the evening, the family left the center room, the living room of the house. My mother and my sisters, or my sisters themselves, would go up to bed upstairs, where I used to go to bed upstairs. I had to go down to the basement. And an 8-year-old child had a tough time differentiating the reason in that. Why am I going to the basement? I'm going to hell, they're going to heaven. Earth is the living room. I'm going down to deal with demons and monsters and ghosts and all the things that scare me. They don't have to. There's a house with 3 women and 1 male, 1 boy, me. And I got a little defensive. I'm saying, gee, this is kind of ganging up. My older sister had a basement bedroom, okay, and it was a storage room that was about 18 feet wide and 35 feet long. Okay, and it was a concrete room, no windows. And it had a light bulb over a big industrial iron sink, you know, like a laundry sink, and had a pull string on the light. The bed was in the opposite corner of the room. It was a double bed, a single bed. And I had a dresser halfway. I had a couple of carpets thrown on the floor, old carpets, and there's a lot of storage stuff along the wall. And I was there about 6 months in that room. And I developed some very, very particular and articulate rituals that I felt I had to go through to protect myself. I was like, again, it's embarrassing. I was a youngster. And if you can imagine me going down a staircase of rough hewn wood, there's no guardrail. So one step wrong and you're off into this black pit. I turn on the light. It's a little circular light switch.
Think about like, I don't know if you've ever been in the old houses like that, but like a lot of times in scary movies, it'll show the basement like that, where it's just stairs. There's no handrails. It makes loud noises. The movie that comes to mind that you could relate to what he's kind of describing would be the Amityville Horror. But I know that that's like a demon possessed house. But if you think about the way the basement was, you know, it kind of comes out into the middle of a concrete area. There's no guardrails. It's loud, it's dark, it's scary, and they're making an 8-year-old little child go down there and sleep. Like, that's nightmare fuel, in my humble opinion.
And a single naked bulb goes on down at the bottom of these stairs, okay? So I turn that light on, I open the door, I close the door because my mother complains of the cold coming in from the basement. I go down the stairs, I get to the bottom, I do a 180-degree turn, and I walk the full length of the house on this floor with these pipes rattling and wheezing and banging over my head. It's pitch black ahead of me, and the only light is behind me hanging down from the ceiling. I'm now cut off from the house, cut off from them. I walk this full length into the darkness, from this gradients of light into complete darkness, groping around in the dark. I do about a 45-degree angle when I get to the end. And I pull the string and it lights up this end. And then I'm supposed to walk all the way back to the other end, turn that light off, and now walk toward the light from the dark. And I've got this horrible terror going on inside of me. And this is every night. This is every day because it's pitch black down there, no windows. She didn't intend all of this. And when I sniveled about it, when I complained and I cried.
Content, I don't know if it's been verified. I can understand and respect your point when you say I don't believe any of the narrative he's telling. I think it's been verified, but I'm not sure. I mean, but again, how do you verify that? His mother's deceased and you only hear him talk. So it's very possible that it could be a narrative. And thank you for sharing your opinion.
Cried about it. I got smacked in the head. You know, what's the matter with you? Quit being such a wimp. And she, you know, she was trying to solve a problem. She had not enough room upstairs to where I didn't have to share a bedroom with a sister. I'm 8 years old. I need to go to the basement.
And what were those morbid games that you played with your sister?
Okay. Well, the one I remember someone talking about in a book was one that was playing gas chamber or electric chair or something. And we had this big old overstuffed chair up in my room. And it was not just my sister and I, it was my sister and I and a friend, a close friend. We got into all these games. We got into one game where we'd roll up in a rug and a person would try to get out of it. It's just like a large throw rug. And it was, I guess, what fascinated us individually about it is it was a completely, it broke up the monotony, I guess, of what we were doing. Didn't have a lot of toys to play with. We got bored with those pretty quickly. So we looked for things to do. You roll up in the rug and you try to get out, and the other two would leave the room, and we see who could get out fastest. You know?
That's an interesting games he's playing there. True Crime says, I'd love to interview his sisters, and I really would too. I would love to have their perspectives. Maybe we can look it up after this and see if his sisters ever did an interview.
Try to work your way out sideways or scoot out the end of it or whatever. And went from that to being tied in this overstuffed chair with a cord or something, or pieces of sheet or sash or something, and went through this process. I guess that's back in 1960 when Carol Chessman was executed down in California. We're up in Montana. And so I got, there's a lot of media coverage on that because he was an author, he'd written books, they're trying to save his life, he'd not killed anybody, why are they executing him?
Hello Kitty just brought up a good point where he stated oversized chair up in his room. Like, not in the basement. So that goes back to what Content was saying about it possibly being a narrative, because he absolutely did say there was an oversized chair up in my room.
And so that's, I think, where the fascination with that came in, that gas chamber effect. And I think it overly fascinated some people in relation to this case because it seems so obvious a piece, you know.
Thank you,
I'm
hello.
preparing
Kitty.
My mindset for doing deathly kind of things.
Another obvious piece would actually be, I don't know if the story is true, that you beheaded one of your sister's doll and cut off the hands of the doll.
It's interesting you bring that up. I had a cap gun. It was by Mattel, right? Fanner 50, it was a very fancy cap gun. I got it in New York City. I went there for one summer with a cousin. And when I came back, my sister was kind of jealous, my little sister. For years, I never really put any value on what happened. Tried to, you know, figure out beyond the obvious what happened in this scenario. But I've since found it plausible to believe that when she was angry or jealous about something, she would fuel her attitude toward resolving something. She hated that cap gun because it came between us as brother and sister. It was something I had that she didn't have. That trip represented something she really wanted, she didn't get, and I did. But very soon after getting back from that trip, she got in an argument with me. It was over something really petty. She got really outraged. She picked up that cat pistol. I said, "Don't throw that." And she threw it right at me. Wham, hard. It hit the floor and my toe, and it hurt bad. But it broke the gun, the inner mechanism. It wouldn't work after that. I picked it up. I found that out. It wouldn't cock and pull the trigger anymore. And that really outraged me. So I said, "So you want to play like that, huh?" So I go running into her room. She says, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" She's shrieking and chasing me, right? So I run into her room and I grab up her Barbie doll. It was the one fancy doll she had, the Barbie doll. Everybody has one, right? She had a pair of sewing scissors sitting there and a sewing machine, a sewing kit. I grabbed the scissors out. The head didn't decapitate, it pops off. So I popped that off. I said, "Well, that's going to go right back on. That's no damage." So I took the scissors and I cut the hands off the doll. I said, "Here, now you got a toy that doesn't work too good. I got a toy that doesn't work too good." That was my attitude. It wasn't quite just me going and, dismembering her doll. Again, I think that's a little bit too quick an assignation. It's not me to judge these professionals, but when they look at me here on Monday morning after the football game and they say, "Gee, here's all these little parts of the puzzle," oh, this indicates what he was going to do. And if that's the case, I want to know about the teenage kid or the preteen kids and the puberty, the pre and post puberty kids. They're going through these raging moods and attitudes.
Content, I'm not sure. I didn't catch that if he unalived his sister. I didn't catch that. Yeah, dismembering a doll.
That go out and kill neighborhood cats. They hang them up from a telephone pole or hang them up from a tree, shoot them full of arrows and set fire to them. I was reading about that in Dear Abby. Where are those children today? Are they serial killers? Or are they police chiefs and mayors and aldermen and assemblymen? But I'm saying there are periods in when kids, they break things, they steal things, they lie, they go through these changes. Yet I've had these people.
You're good, Content. I thought I missed something, to be honest.
One or two doctors in particular, who I won't go into, who very casually just slapped all these assignations on her and said, "Well, of course, if you run into a kid that's doing this kind of thing, you've got a developing serial killer, you better put him in treatment real quick and save his life," right? To a point, I agree with them that someone who's acting out and has a dysfunctional childhood or has just gone through a dysfunctional childhood and hasn't gotten violent yet or is heading toward that direction, passive aggressive. Violence was the last thing I exhibited, and then it was murderous violence. Okay? So sure, there's a lot of value in getting youngsters like that help to where they can find themselves and they can find value in themselves and they can find value in interacting with others, and they go in a different direction than what I did. But to just sit there and casually lay these, it's I guess that bothers my ego. I don't know that these people have not worked with me year after year. The psychiatrists and psychologists I deal with are in a prison setting. They're there 8 hours a day. They have to deal with me every day. If I am their patient and I screw up, they can kiss their job and goodbye. I mean, they're going to be a lot of hell on them for not.
I have never read Dear Abby, so I'm not sure. Content, I don't know if he unalived animals. I think so, because Spencer's saying he's talking about severe animal abuse like no big deal. So I'm pretty sure he did. Thank you for that, Spencer, and thank you for being here.
Not seeing this in advance and saying, "Oh, we should lock him up. He might be violent," right? And any psych out there, any professional out there is going to tell you, I think, that if they are going into my mind, into my past, into my feelings, that there's a potential there for acting out or getting uncontrolled or being violent because they're stripping.
Hey, Shirley Raw, thank you for being here. This is Edmond Kemper. He unalived a bunch of college co-eds in 1974, I believe it was, and then he did his mother that way, and then he turned himself in.
Away the veneer of my civilization, the stripping away the veneer of the protections of myself. And there's a lot of things that can come jumping out of there. And then to walk out of that therapy session into this kind of a setting, prison, where it's very violent, it's very aggressive, it's a distilled kind of medium that you might encounter on a street corner somewhere, the street corner thug, the street corner punk. or the alleyway where someone is going to take terrible advantage of you or put you in a terrible situation that you may have to be violent to get out of. That's this main line. I mean, that's where all these guys go. And I'm going to walk out of a therapy session where this man has been peeling my mind, so to speak, and getting into my psyche and my soul and finding out what makes me tick, or trying to help put me back together, or help try to put me together for the first time.
Shirley, he's 6'9" or 7. He's really tall. Yes, toxic. I don't think he unallowed his grandparents.
And then I'm going to walk out of that into this meeting.
Oh,
that's not very.
Y'all were saying yes, he did as a teenager, so maybe
Conducive to good health. I'm aware of that going into the situation, so I'm twice as leery as the doctor is. But unfortunately, he's got all of these mindsets and these theories and these books he's read and that he's trained under. And I guess what has happened in my life kind of jumps out of the book a few chapters ahead. And the way I've experienced it, the psychs don't want to go that far. They don't want to come out there and work the pages back into the book so that I fit in there too, or my kind of criminal fits into there too. They kind of just stand on the edge of the book and they put on their feathers and they put on their paint and they get their rattles and then they hop around and they go into the witch doctor routine. And that I resent, and unfortunately so do they. When they have to put on their rattles and put their crosses up and say, he's evil, get him away from us. He'll take advantage of us and he'll rape, pillage, and burn, right? So guess what? That's where I'm on the cutting edge of humanity. I find out now, and it doesn't matter that I find this out because I've already been cast out by society. So any things I find out or discover, or even beautiful little things I discover about the ability of the human spirit to heal itself, just to an extent enough where he can make friendships, he can form bonds, he can cry when someone dies of AIDS, or he can feel bad when a friend gets injured or killed by someone else. See what I'm saying? Or grows old and dies, unable to go back out to the streets because they won't let him out early and he's dying, that kind of thing. And the feeling that develops, it can develop hard, wicked feelings. It can develop some very tender and some very sad feelings. And then you're trying to deal with the widow of that man through the mail, the very restrictive mail procedures we have here. See, we're not supposed to co-correspond across these lattices of relationship. It's tough to deal with, but you know what? That's my world now. That's what allows me to be sane. Let's call it quote unquote sane. That's what allows me to function as a human being, is not doing time with these incredible constraints that I've caused to be on me, right? It's living my life, right, with the limitations that I've caused to happen. Living my life is different than doing time, because then there's the ability to work into that picture positive things, giving things back, like working in the Blind Project, the Volunteers of Vacaville, where we read books onto tape for the blind all over the United States and sometimes in foreign countries. I participated in that program for the last 14 years. I started out with very, very little involvement, reading books, working on beat baseballs for blind sports, doing some clerk work, working
so
on
now he's talking about the work he's doing in the prison and how he was reading the books for blind people. That's interesting how he turned himself around a little bit in prison.
Newsletter and different jobs in there. Become the reader supervisor, teaching guys how to read the books onto tape, and all the way up to the point where I became the inmate coordinator, which is the lead man there. It's the guy that's in charge of making sure everything works right all the time.
Mayla's mom says, I'm a few minutes behind, but I tend to believe his story because what's the point in lying? The situation in the what's the point in lying in the situation again? Just my opinion. Okay, yeah, I can understand and see that. You know, he could be just carrying on to be out of his cell, but I do know the FBI got a lot of help from him, so I don't know. Content says he's not insane either, because he speaks like we all do when it comes to wanting to case yourself in the best light possible. Listen to him. He's not insane. He's just a run of the mill unaliver. Yeah. And Reese, I don't think so. I've been seeing your comments.
And when I first went into that activity, they were saying there were things I could never do. To ask you a question about your interview, did you see a trophy case when you came in?
Yes.
Out in the foyer, there's a trophy case. Take a look at it. There's several trophies in there, and a couple of them have my name on them. And the reason is, I'm asking you that, there's a big 40-inch trophy in there. It's triple tier trophy, very impressive looking. That's the Volunteer of the Year award, okay? And it has a little speech on the front of it on a brass plaque that says, this award is given to the person who most epitomizes what they stand for. You know, the help, the service to the handicapped, visually impaired. And this is a very time-honored award. Okay, they've been in existence now for 31 years. I've been in that group for 14 of those years. And when the first couple of years I was there, I used to like, the trophy case used to be in the Blind Project, okay? And I used to walk up and I'd look at that trophy, and I'd never had a trophy in my life. I'd never had a ribbon, I'd never had a plaque, none of that stuff. I'd never tried for it. And
well, you had the Junior Chamber of Commerce.
Okay, yeah.
From
actually,
Atascadero.
I forgot. They don't call that though.
Oh, yeah.
They had to get rid of that name because the Chamber of Commerce took offense to that. JCs, yeah, United States JCs. And at one point was the youngest JC in America because I was 19 when I was put in as an associate member who couldn't vote. And by the time I was 20, I was on the board of directors. Yeah, okay. No,
That's interesting.
no trophies, no plaques, anything like that. I got some certificates. But that was, again, that was in the institution. That's where I'm learning to achieve. I developed a better image of self and those around me, and I really started cooking. I started doing things, real positive. I felt good about it. And that continued on to the streets. I went to the JCs on the streets, but as my relationship, I was paroled to my mother, okay? What these experts don't notice in the picture, I haven't seen it in writing anywhere. It could be somewhere.
Yep.
That when I was 14 years old, I ran away from my mother. They mention that. But if you look at it in the overall picture, why did I run away? I wanted to be with my father. That's a very topical approach to it. I wanted to get away from my mother because I was dreaming, thinking, fantasizing murder all day long. I couldn't get it out of my head. She and I couldn't battle with her because I was very intimidated by her. She's 6 feet tall. She weighs 2 1/4, 225 pounds. She's not a fat woman. She's just this great big woman who I was terrified of. She had verbal capabilities you wouldn't believe. I used to watch her field strip grown men.
Oh my goodness.
In emotional little contests. And when they get into...
He used to watch his mother field strip young men in emotional little contests, and when they...
point where they wanted to smack her.
Oh, and she'd make them mad. Like she would mess with them emotionally until they wanted to smack her. This is interesting. So she did it to him too.
Then she started attacking them on beating women. Oh, slap the woman around, And then she'd toy with them on that. And I'd watch these guys dance around the room having fits, knocking out windows, punch a hole in the door, and stomp off. And she could control people like that. I'm sitting there watching that in awe from the one point of view and in terror from the other. I grew up with this stuff. She did that to my dad when they were always battling before the divorce. I'm not trying to put on her what happened to the girls or to her, but I'm saying there was a lot of psychological involvement there.
Did you feel early on?
I got it in the legs. One time I turned around shrieking and she hit me in the mouth, and the little keeper on the clasp flew off, little silver buckle thing. And she smacked me. This thing breaks off on my mouth, right? She hits me across the face with this belt and says, "Shut up. The neighbors are going to think I'm beating you." I'm looking at her. What? I'm not supposed to cry out, which is a natural reaction to these great red welts that are going on. I mean, I was a little shit. I got rude downstairs. She took me upstairs and beat the hell out of me.
And told him to shut up because the neighbors were going to think that she was beating him, and she was, which is really interesting. I'm not sure what field strip means, but I'm assuming it's some kind of emotional damage of some sort. It means point out their angry small members, says Reese.
I would like to think it was a better part of my character that was resisting this kind of pressure to fit into some mold that she had the image of as being the good little kid. I'll be damned if I'm going to be that good little kid. I'm getting the hell beat out of me for not being that little kid. I got I don't know what you call it, resistant to it. But again, it's not in manly ways or in prideful ways. It was sneaky, devious ways. I'd get around that. And one of the ways was she won't give me an allowance. I'll take money out of her purse. I never robbed her, took all of it. I'd take a dime here, a quarter there, 15 cents there, 50 cents here. She comes in drunk at night. She's not going to know how much change she has. So to rebound on that, she started counting her money at all kinds of odd times to keep on top of me. And it was like a game we played for years. At the age of 13, she finally lets me go visit my father, okay, down in LA, where I was born. I'm in Montana where she was born. I don't like Montana. It's cold in the winter, it's hot in the summer, it's miserable, and the people up there are nice people, but hey, they're not my people. That's what I'm saying now. I wasn't viewing or voicing those things then. I was feeling them, but I didn't know how to put them into words. So I finally get to come down and see my dad again, down in LA, all right, 1 month. I never touched her purse again. That scared her. That really bothered her because she'd beat me halfway senseless with that belt, trying to impress, and terror tactics. Okay, we're going to eat dinner and I'm going to beat your ass afterwards, so I can think about it for a half hour. Or after some little thing she's doing. And she tried psychological tactics. She tried, I'm going to put you in an orphanage, I'm going to disavow you, and none of that shit worked. So I go see my dad for 30 days. And my stepbrother and I, we go out and mow lawns. We say, gee, Dad, you're going out to dinner tonight. Can we go someplace and eat? And he says, sure. He'd give us a few dollars. We'd go down to some little diner down the street. He treated us like little men, like he wanted to be treated by he came from a matriarchal household too. I guess if you know how that stuff runs in families, right? Matriarch.
So it sounds like at his dad's house, he was actually happy and treated like a person instead of how he was treated at his mother's house.
Household, the son goes out and finds a mother image and marries her. I didn't know all this stuff back then. It would have made a lot more sense, right? But I got this domineering grandmother on my father's side. I got this domineering grandmother on my mother's side who died before I was born. But now she's reincarnated in my mother and her sister, my aunt. They're two very domineering, very aggressive, very successful women. Okay, so these two women are in terrible conflict with each other, competition, and they didn't get along at all. All right, so I'm in the middle of that, trying to find my way, and I go stay with my dad, and I can only say he reflected back on his childhood and said, gee, I wish I'd been treated this way. So that's how he treated me and my stepbrother. And we responded to that. We'd go, if we needed spending money, we would go out and we'd do tasks around the neighborhood, clean yards, rake this, mow that, water the flowers, and make a few dollars, and we'd have some fun. Okay, and then sometimes he'd ask us to do something. We'd do it because he was always fair with us and kind, and he was generous with us. So 30 days of doing this opened up whole new feelings in me that I'd never had before. And I wish I'd had more experience with my father growing up so I could orient more to being tall around not tall peers. There was I call it an artificial paranoia that developed. When I walk into a room, everybody stops and looks at me because I'm the tallest guy they've seen or the tallest guy in the room. They stop and they look. And ironically, the average or short guy is sitting over there looking at me with a great resentment because he wants that attention. I've got it. He thinks it's really neat because he's looking at it from a vicarious position. He doesn't realize that there's thorny sides to that attention. I don't want that attention. I want to just blend into the room. I just want to kind
He's very perceptive.
of sidle in. So I see two kinds of tall men,
right,
or tall male or tall female personalities. Those who are very passive because of all of this thrust on them.
Mello says one thing we have to remember is that this is from his perspective, and that is absolutely correct. Trixie said maybe if his dad raised him, then he wouldn't have done those things. I was questioning that myself while I was sitting here listening as well.
Or who are very aggressive and they use that and they apply it towards ends. Like the little guy who goes out and becomes the bank president and he's the champion this and did that and never saw the fourth grade. Yeah, because he's real aggressive because he's denied all those little attentions. He has to grab them and he has to go out there and put himself in the limelight. I get it naturally, so there's resentment. And little guys tormented me all the time I'm growing up.
Did you feel like an outsider, an outcast early on?
I always felt like an outsider, and it's again because I didn't ever fit in. I'd moved around a lot, for one thing. I went to different schools when I was in Los Angeles from age 5 till 7. When I'm going to kindergarten, first grade, second grade, I got in trouble in public school. And I look fondly back on those times because that's when I was acting out and I was normal. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying I went around and kidnapped people in classrooms or broke windows out. We didn't get into stuff like that. But I was tardy and I was messing around and I was recalcitrant. And I was getting bad marks for it. And my parents were getting called by the PTA. But you know what? That's a hell of a lot better than a few years later when I'm real spooky and I'm real quiet and nobody ever hears from me and I'm in school and I go home and very few people knew me because I'm in that basement and now I'm pulling into myself and now things are getting very morbid in their.
LA says, I thought he said it was only a summer he was in LA. I'm thinking he's talking about before his mom and dad got divorced, that when he was younger he lived in LA, and then his mom and dad got divorced and they moved away, and he referred to going back to LA after some years or whatever.
Orientation. I started becoming fascinated with things evolving around death and destruction and evil and all of that. I'm not saying I became a Satan worshiper because I didn't. I was afraid of evil things, afraid of those powers that we all don't understand. And as a little kid, I had a very, very strange orientation to those. I mean, it wasn't rational.
What was your fantasies at that time, morbid fantasies?
At what, about age 8 or 9?
Or later on when you said you were thinking all the time about death?
What I was fantasizing about, I was building up big loads of frustration inside, big loads of hatred, because I had no outlet for it. I should have developed outlets, but I didn't.
Abellis, thank you so much. Abellis just gifted 10 memberships, y'all. If you got a membership from Abellis, please tell them thank you. Thank you so much, Abellis. That was so sweet of you. You're so sweet. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, it didn't play all of it. I'm sorry, Abellis. I'll play it for you again before we end the stream. Thank you, Abellis. That was super sweet of you. Thank you. Jew friggin' Jew.
I didn't know how at that time. So the outlets that developed themselves, or I developed without knowing it, were fantasies about me being the last. I got that out of a school book, this thing of being the last person alive on the world. And the thing that was posed to me in this textbook was, it was social studies. And it was meant to play upon the loneliness youngsters can feel. And it's a very uncomfortable feeling. And you can't have love and you can't have adventure and you can't have excitement without being able to share it with other people, because that's where a lot of the dimension comes from. Okay, so they posed this thing at me, well, what if you were the last person in the world and you had all these cars and airplanes and boats and ships and things to do, but nobody to share it with, right? Wouldn't that be awful? And I thought, hey, that's a thought. I never thought of that before. So it became a seed, like a little core to fantasies for me. Some mysterious thing has happened and everybody else is gone, and I got all these things I can do and no inhibitions, no restrictions. I can do what I want. I don't get yelled at anymore. Okay, that soon became very hollow. So I built upon that and added to it. Well, people were still around, but they were inanimate. They couldn't affect me. They couldn't hurt me. And then it went further and further and further until finally, by the time I'm reaching puberty, I'm approaching puberty, and I'm starting to sense myself, and I've already been accosted by a girlfriend, not sexually, physically.
Why does he say puberty instead of puberty? Like he's genius level intelligence, but he calls it puberty.
but emotionally, she's trying to, she was a little ahead of me. We're the same age, but she was pretty aggressive, and she's a beautiful young girl. But I wasn't ready for that kind of relationship, and I was scared by it. She kind of cowed me into backing away from the relationship altogether because she wanted to get physical. She wanted to kiss and to neck and to smooch and imitate what she saw in older kids. And that kind of terrified me because I didn't understand the feelings inside.
At one point, your sister teased you also about a woman school teacher. And you said, if I wanted to kiss her, I'd have to kill her first.
Yeah, that had been a, you can imagine how that goes, the deep, dark secrets that one sibling shares with another. It's troubling inside of me, so that was from that period, that more advanced period where people were still there, they just weren't animate. They could not react or respond to what I was feeling or what I was sharing, because what I was sharing was very embarrassing, very humiliating. It's hard to talk about now, really, because it's obviously it affects how a person feels about himself. But it's not too hard to get around that, because then I look at the wreckage I have behind me, the dead people, caused by my self-indulgence in fantasy life, and then my self-indulgence in not doing something about it, like getting help or taking action against myself even. A lot of people committed suicide at early age, and they don't understand why, and a lot of times, again, by troubled parents and school counselors, they'll water it down into, well, he couldn't adjust and he was having a difficult time, so he took his life. I would not want to say too casually that they're probably pretty lucky he did. Not in every case, not even in most cases, but in some of those cases, you might have had some very inwardly violent young people that they had, on the one hand, the prospect of they're about to act out, and on the other, in a very violent way or a very unsocial and socially abhorrent way. And on the other hand, they keep holding it in, and they say, I can't do that. So they, sometimes they kill themselves. I played with death. One of my favorite tricks back then was to go out and lay in front of in the cars, in the traffic. I'm walking down the sidewalk with a friend, it's a roustabout friend. And we're clowning around about something. And I'll say, hey, check this out. And I'll go lay in the street like a stiff. I'll lay in the street like I got run over. And a car comes driving by. And of course, I'm expecting this guy isn't drunk. I'm expecting this guy isn't slightly demented and say, hey, there's a kid laying in front of me. Yeah, it's his fault. Boom, boom, just.
I'm sorry, Eek. After this, we're going to get into some funny stuff.
Shift gears going over me. They always stop. And they jump out of the car and get all upset when I get up and walk off or run away. And but it was a little game we played. He didn't go lay in front of the car, so I was doing that. I laugh now because it's embarrassing, but it indicated, I think, how little I thought of myself. I think it indicated that a part of me would rather I got run over right then than I pursue what I was continuing to pursue in my life. Because, looking at myself and how I was developing inside, nothing good could come of that.
And you had also a great admiration for John Wayne at the time.
He looked a lot like me.
Yeah, that was curious to me. I never knew he went and laid in traffic either.
My dad.
Oh, I know, Eek.
And he acted a lot like my dad. My dad was kind of a big, loud guy. Actually, John Wayne was 6'4", had very little tiny feet. My dad was 6'7". He had little tiny feet. And you notice how comedians, when they imitate how John Wayne walked, there's this rambling thing with the hips waving, and they always do this trick. You ever wonder why? He didn't just pick that way to walk. I found, quite by accident, that very big men with very little feet, who have abnormally small feet, have a tough time balancing, and it's a little balancing act they're going through. I went to Grauman's Chinese Theater after it was renamed.
That's interesting. Really big men with small feet, little angry feet, as Reese said. Walk that way like John Wayne did because they have trouble walking or balancing. That's an interesting perspective to have. I don't know how I feel about that.
Named, and I went and checked all those different footprints out, and here I'd grown up as a kid, not a very tall kid looking at other people being like this, much shorter than me. In my mind's eye, it was all balanced. And when I saw pictures of other kids in me or other people in me, and there's this great difference, it was always shocking to me too, because I never saw it that way. But here I went, and I watch all these movies and TV programs, and I see these people as being bigger than me because I'm a youth. And then I go to this physical exhibit where it shows their foot size. And I step on John Wayne's boot print with his cowboy boot, and my shoe completely covers it over. It's gone. When I was 14 years old, I had bigger feet than he did. You know? When I was 14 years old, I had bigger feet than my father. I was 6'3.5", he's 6'7". He works on a construction site as an electrician. I'm going to junior high school. We go to Kinney's. We get the same kind of Oxford shoes, black Oxfords. I wear a 14.5, excuse me. I wear a 12.5, he wears a 12. All right? In the mix-up of getting up and going to work and going to school in the morning, he comes running around the house looking for his shoes. He grabs mine. I can't find mine, so I go running around the house and I grab his. And all day long, I'm walking around with these pinched feet. I got blisters developing. He's flopping around at work, half a size too big in his shoe, and he says, "God damn it, got my kid's shoes again." And they're all saying, "Gee, Big Ed, you know, your kid, you got his shoes on and you're flopping around in them?" And he thought that was great. Well, that was a big laugh, right? Hey, I was kind of proud of that too, because it's following in Father's footsteps. When I was 14 years old, I put his old Army jacket on, his Class A uniform. I put his jacket on, and if I had pulled my shoulders forward, I would have ripped it right up the back, because I had broader shoulders than he had. My head's larger than his is. I have a very large head. I wear an 8 3/4 helmet for a motorcycle. 8 3/4 is very big. It's hard to find a helmet like that.
Right? Actually, what's strange is that another serial killer from Santa Cruz, Herb Millen, grew up hating John Wayne, actually.
I wouldn't blame him. I was in a jail cell right next to him for months, and I was in prison up in the hole here in the lockup unit for going on 3 years with him, about 2.5 years. And at one point, I got him a job in the kitchen. I was already on the kitchen crew, and the sergeant pulled me aside and asked me to talk to the guys about him coming on the crew, because he'd alienated a lot of the guys, and they were afraid there'd be violence. So I talked to them, and there was no problem. So they brought him out to the crew. He worked a few months. He goes to the main line. I'm still sitting in the hole saying, "Geez, what happened here?" And, you know, I knew Herbie, and I don't call him Herbert Mullen. And of course, I don't call myself Edmond Kemper III either. I never heard that in my life until I was locked up for murder, right? But little Herbie was, when I met him in Redwood City Jail, okay, our first meeting was I bumped him out of the priority cell, where they could look from the office and see through the steel door, the glass in the door, and see him physically, or they could watch the monitor and watch him. He got bumped next door. There was a shower in the priority cell, never had to leave the cell. For him to shower from the other cell, he had to go out into the main area. They had to lock everybody in one of the, I guess you call them tanks. They moved 15 guys, 30 guys out of the tank into the activity area. They'd walk him around into their tank. He'd shower. He'd come back out. And all the way over there and all the way back, they're catcalling him. They're calling him names. They're yelling because he caused them great interruption in their day, right? He resented that. He got bumped out of the priority cell into a non-shower cell. I got the shower cell, right? So he wasn't too friendly at first. And I'd say, "Excuse me, Mr. Mullen." I says, "Do you have a bar of soap? There's no soap over here." He took it all with him. He had no need for it, but he took it with him. And he'd say yes, and I'd say, "Well, can I use a bar of it?" He said, "No." And I'd say, "Oh, I got one of these little shits here." And what it is, he's a little wimpy guy that hates big guys because he always feels intimidated by them, right? And that's how we started out.
That is some BS, though. Like, you take all the soap for the shower and don't let nobody have none? What the crap?
So I started thinking about that, and I went back to my old relationships in therapy and group therapy and Tascadero and youth authority and stuff, and I'm saying, okay, well, we can deal with this. So I said, well, I have to be kind to him. So I found out something he liked. He loved Planters peanuts, little bags of peanuts, shelled peanuts. And so I bought 20, 30 bags of them. I didn't care for them myself. And I offered him some one day. And they were both on camera 24 hours a day. So I said, "Herbie, would you like some peanuts?" And he'd say, "Yeah." And I say, "Oh, I got to him, right down to the inner core there. Yeah." So childhood thing comes out. I says, oh, here. And he was fascinated by this thought of, gee, he's just giving me some peanuts and I didn't do anything for him. I don't know him. I'm not being nice to him. Why would he give me some peanuts? So he comes over to the bars. We can't even see each other. And I reach out with these peanuts around the side. And I see this little hand come out. And I thought of it almost as a little monkey paw. It's what it seemed like. So innocent. And this little hand comes out, starts to reach for the peanuts. And then he hesitated. And he pulls back. And I thought, oh, geez, he's defensive. He's thinking I'm going to grab his hand and rip his arm off or something. I'm this great big guy, right? So without saying anything, I just reached around and I laid him on the bars and then pulled my hand away. And he took them and he enjoyed them and all of that. And I'd say, gee, Herbie, did you eat all those peanuts? And he'd say, oh, no, I still got some left. I said, well, I got plenty more. I said, go ahead and enjoy them. So what I did is I started giving him bags of peanuts. And he had this horrible habit. There's guys back in the tank, and he and I are in these cells facing them through 3 sets of bars. And I can't see him, and he can't see me. I don't know where on the set of bars he is. The set of bars is maybe 9 feet wide.
I'm trying to just listen to this story. I'm sorry I'm not talking much.
And, 8 or 9 feet high. And when he would get to acting up, he'd sit there for hours writing and writing at this little desk. And the other guys were ignoring him. So that night they're watching Saturday Night Special, with all this rock music playing and stuff, and they're enjoying it. And he'd get up and make this real loud speech about how bad television is for you and why you shouldn't watch it. All the things it'll do to you. And they're having fits. They're trying to throw things at him. They can't get at him. They're raging. They're mad because he's destroying the one thing they really enjoy. And he's just having a ball doing this. He'll sit for hours all day writing this 2-hour speech, exactly as long as it takes to watch that show. So he'd also sit over there and sing these horrible songs. He couldn't sing a lick at all. And he's singing these horrible songs. And one time I was in the car coming back to Redwood City, and the cop got so upset at the singing he's doing in the back of the station wagon. He turns around with his can of mace. He says, I've had it. Get out of the way, Kemper. And I'm saying, hey, wait a minute. You're going to get me with that stuff. But he's trying to mace the guy in the back of the car because he won't shut up. And he's trying to get him to shut up. And the guy just ignored him. He had this way of really getting in people's nerves. So he'd pull these little stunts, these horrible songs and the speeches and things. And I'd say, Herbie, why do you do stuff like that? He says, oh, I have a right to do what I want to do too. And, yeah, okay, right. So I started this, what they call just real basic behavior modification therapy. Okay, I'd had a little bit of psychology study. I'd worked in the psych testing area in Atascadero. I knew some of these things. So I set up a very basic and very essential, just bare minimum behavior experiment. Behavior modification, right? You reward them when they're good, you punish them when they're bad. And if you're absolutely accurate in when you do these things, quick punishment when they do bad and quick reward when they do good. Supposedly, this is supposed to attack you at a subliminal level, a subconscious level, and you don't have a lot of control over your reactions, that it would improve your behavior, essentially. And then they have these great elaborate experiments, like in Youth Authority when I went through, where they try these things. So what I did is when he was bad, I'd get a cup full of water in a styrofoam cup and I'd reach around and I'd throw it on him. And it's embarrassing. And it also gets his papers wet and, So we got this.
I mean, that's interesting. First you're giving him peanuts and now you're throwing water on him when he's annoying as crap.
Game. When he was good, I'd give him peanuts and I'd try to gas him when he was bad. It's called gassing. Throw this water on him. And he'd duck all over the house. I couldn't figure out where he was at, so I kept missing him. So what I did is I waited one day till I knew he was asleep, or I suspected he was. And I called one of the guys over to the bars from the place in the back, the tank. And I went like this. And I says, and he reads it, and he says, and I said, shh. And I call him over to the bars, and I said, hey, I said, I want to work something out where I can get Herbie with these cups of water and he can't figure out how I'm doing it. And I says, I just thought of a way. And he says, what's that? And I said, I want you to set up a grid on the bars where you're at. Put a little piece of string or a little piece of plastic or a little something he won't notice. Count over how many bars there are on his cell front. And from the wall, go over that far on your set and set up boundaries. And then when I give you a signal that will be a hand signal, very casually walk over. Don't look at me, just casually walk over and drape yourself on the bars where he's at. So I'll know. And if he's back away from the bars, go back that far and position yourself so it's a grid, it's targeting grid. So he would do this, and Herbie'd hear me turn the water on, or maybe I'd have some already set up, and I would reach through the bars and I'd blast him. I got him every time. And he couldn't figure out how all of a sudden I got so accurate, you know? And it was without fail. I'd get him with that water, wham. And, you know, it's embarrassing, and everybody's laughing back there, and good shot, Ed, and all that stuff. And then
I mean, eventually he's going to stop doing the annoying stuff.
Ask him if he'd do something, or hey, can we do this or whatever, you know, and he'd participate in something with me. I'd give him peanuts. When he's bad, he gets blasted with water. This went on for 2 or 3 weeks.
Oh, Shirley.
And he actually got away from the bad behavior when he said, hey, I want to sing. And I says, well, hey, guys in the back.
Okay, Shirley, thank you for being here. After this goes off, we're going to talk about some funny stuff from the TLC channel.
Do you mind if he sings? Oh, we don't want to hear that shit. I said, hey, you want to hear it now, or do you want to hear it tonight when you're watching the show? Yeah, okay. So go ahead, Herbie, sing.
What did you sing?
And he'd sing for 30, 40 seconds and then get bored and say, gee, I don't want to do this anymore. You know, because the fun was gone out of it. But the point is, it got a handle on his behavior. And the cops are watching this. The deputies are on camera watching me. I mean, they're on the monitors watching every move I'm making, right? And they're fascinated. They're watching this thing going back and forth with me and Herbie. They're not involving themselves. They're just watching it. And after a while, one of them come in and said, Herbie is completely cooperative now. He's not messing around. Because I've been, as we're talking, these little frictions out between he and I'm showing him some insights into why people don't like him. I'm showing some insights into what his behavior is causing in them. And he had realized by that point that it was just, he's reacting to how people are reacting to him. And it's just a self-perpetuating thing. And it was the only way he could get out his negative feelings. And I said, well, why don't you pose on the positive? Focus on the positive instead, and the negative will go away. I don't think anybody ever did that with him before, because he responded real well to it. And later when we were up here in the hole together, and we weren't even supposed to be together. They didn't want us together, but we were up in the hole together. I was the only guy he could talk to. A lot of pain inside. He had a lot of anguish inside. He had a lot of hate inside. And it was addressed at people he didn't even know, because he didn't dare do anything to the people he knew, because he was aware of all of the structure around that, and that would be the end of his life. And so I started, the way I found out about these things is I would pose little comments or questions aimed at him as we're sitting up there on the tier, on the concrete floor, sitting there against the wall, talking to one another. And I would say, how did you feel? You know, what did you, when you bought that little Saturday Night Special 22, I says, did you ever go out shooting with that? You know, just target shooting? He says, well, not much. And I say, well, try this on. You loaded it up, you went out, you set up bottles, you set up cans, you set them around in little areas right around close, and practice shooting them real fast. And he looks at me all shocked. He says, how do you know that? I said, because that's what I used to do. And those were people, those weren't cans and bottles, and you never told anybody. So he got all fascinated about how I was able to read his mind and stuff. I wasn't. I saw a kindred spirit there, somebody who was doing something very similar to what I was doing as a child. He went to mental institutions, and he went through these processes where these doctors told him what was wrong with him, and these doctors treated things that they decided were wrong with him, and he just sat back very passively and went through these treatments, and they had almost no effect on him, because he didn't dare say what was really going on in his head, because they would cast him off somewhere. He'd be totally separated from the human race, and there were certain things he and certain things I enjoyed.
We've only got what, about maybe 14 more minutes of this, and then it's over. True Crime Addict says, listening and lurking, putting up Christmas decor. I've got to go get my Christmas stuff next week out of storage. I can't wait to get it up. I'm super excited about this year. You guys have made my life a lot better since I started doing YouTube, and I really look forward to seeing all of you in chat. Like, it really makes me happy to see you guys talking in chat and watch your conversations going on. I wanted to let y'all know that.
In being in the human race,
Right.
And being part of the human race, we weren't willing to let go of. So that was that little desperate hanging on. So here comes these professionals saying, oh, this is wrong with you, little lad, and this is wrong with you, and we're going to fix this up, and okay, I'm well, and yeah. Goes out and buys a gun and starts killing people. And I talk about what happened when he killed those people. Oh, they fell dead. And I said, no, they did this, they did that, they gurgled, and some of them kept moving like you hadn't even shot them. And you shot him again. And he says, how did you know this? You weren't there. And I says, I know. I never told anybody that. I know. I was there on my own trip. I know what happened. Herbie, don't give me that bullshit about earthquakes and don't give me that crap about God was telling you. I said, you couldn't even be talking to me now if God was talking to you because of the pressure I'm putting on you right now. These little shocking insights into what you did. God would start talking to you right now if you were really that kind of ill. Because I grew up with people like that. Where? In a maximum security hospital for the criminally insane. Adults. I was 15 years old when I went there.
To go back before that time, when you run away from your mother and
If you think about this time period, I mean, Lord, it had to have been like the late 50s, early 60s. They were still doing lobotomies and all of that back then. Like a mental health institution was a scary place. And he's saying he went there at age 15. I have to wonder if that had contributed to the things he later did in life. But I mean, then we have to take into account the reason he went there, and it was because he unalived his grandparents. So I don't know, but it's an interesting thought.
and went to your grandmother.
No, went to my father.
Yes, but
Or-
afterwards,
yeah.
when you went to your grandmother, you were 14, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you feel you had to kill her?
That was an outburst. It wasn't felt I had to. I went up there hoping, I didn't go there for one thing. I got left there. We went there for Christmas from my father's in LA.
I'm so sorry, Eek.
We went up to the mountains to stay for Christmas, and I got left behind. I was having friction with my stepbrother and my stepmother. There was problems
Awesome,
there. We were vying for his interests, vying for his love. They were desperate because they're the new family. I'm desperate because I've never had the man of my life. I wanted my father's love. I wanted his approval. I wanted his recognitions. And we all got very greedy and desperate at that time. So we fought each other a lot. And it was a lot of friction, and he couldn't handle that. So he got rid of me. I was old family. I was already failure. So, I got parked up in the mountains. There was a lot of dressing on it and window dressing and things. But I was up there with them for 10 months. At first, it was okay.
Okay, Mello, thank you for being here.
Because it was the calm of being away from Montana. There wasn't the hellish stuff. I was going to a good school. As the months went on, the veneer went away. My grandmother had made agreements with me from the gate that she wouldn't get into little humiliating mind games with me like my mother and stepfather had done, right? And I agreed I wouldn't do certain things. And then this mind game stuff started up. She decides she's going to raise me like she raised her 3 sons, and she's going to get rid of all this negative crap that my mother put on me. She's recognizing it as something my mother put on me, and I don't know that it wasn't. Some of it was, but a lot of it was my inability to deal with complex, critical, psychological situations. I could not deal with them. So I resisted it. I ran away. That was my answer, to run. I ran from the people in Montana. I ran from my mother in Montana. I let my father park me up there to get away from the strife in LA. Now I'm stuck. All the bridges are burned because my grandparents are there 24 hours a day. I can't run from them. She never let me get out of her sight for more than an hour without yelling my name out to see where I was. She was convinced I wanted to go down the mountain into town, Little North Fork, to hang around with kids, rowdies and stuff, and be a juvenile delinquent. So she would never let me go down there on my own. She never let me leave the property. And it started simmering, I guess. Started building the passions and the tension. I started developing the fantasies toward her from my mother, killing her. And the decapitation fantasies were even there. They were in place by then already. And
What were those fantasies?
What were they?
He's asking him what were the fantasies. Rubber, I'm cooking this year. I think it'll be just us 6 though. But we live in a really small house, so it'll probably be just us. But I've already started getting stuff to cook. I got some stuff from Whole Foods, and I actually make my own pumpkin. Like I cook organic pumpkin, and then I puree the pumpkin and put it up to make pumpkin pie. And I make my pie crust from scratch and all of that stuff.
Possessing the severed heads of women. Men didn't turn me on. That wasn't I couldn't appreciate the appearances of a guy. I see movies as a youth, and I'm seeing, this was not common, but it was a frequent feature in some movies where they use a shock effect. They'll have someone get their head cut off, or there's a head sitting there when they come around the corner or open the drawer or something. And it went from, that got caught up in my morbid fascination. I made a comment and someone wrote about it that when I was young, I was about 8 or 9 years old, I went to this little come-on. It was like at a record store or something, and they had this crowd of kids there, and there was a magic show. And this guy, you've probably seen it, the fake guillotine, hand pressed, and they put the potato there, and someone puts their neck in the brace, and they slam this thing down, and the potato down below chops in two, but the person's head doesn't fall off, right? And everybody gets very fascinated by that. Oh my God. And then when he puts the blade in place and he pushes it down, it goes through that neck hole, but it never chops anybody's head off. Okay, so he wanted to volunteer I'm not standing in this crowd watching this show, and he wanted to volunteer out of the audience. And some quite beautiful little 16-year-old girl gets up there and this big laugh and all giddy and stuff. And I start getting caught up in this. I said, wow. Right at that moment, I departed reality, because logically I should have been able to ascertain that could not happen. You're not going to get away with chopping somebody's head off in the middle of Helena, Montana, the capital city. But the concept of it was so raw and it was titillating. I says, wow, gee, I gotta watch this. And he had her girlfriend come over and put her hands there to catch her head so it wouldn't fall in the basket, And he was making jokes about this. I got caught up in this.
This is interesting.
This interplay between normal concerns. You don't want to get a bump on her head. Well, hey, if you're chopping her head off, it doesn't matter, right? And this is catching in my mind somehow, and I'm saying, wow. And naturally, everybody let out a shriek, and they're all excited and oh, wow. And as he chops and the potato falls and her head doesn't go anyplace, and he unlocks the brace and she gets out laughing, and he gives her some little prize for coming up and participating in the experiment. That's the first time I'd ever seen a show like that. You see things like that on TV, it's one thing, but to be there and watch things like that, you get more caught up in it.
Yeah, I want to know how this contraption worked.
And I went from there. That became another piece. That's the only way I can really, the only event in my life that I can align that fascination with was the fact that she was a very alluring young lady. I'm coming close to approaching puberty. I think I hit it a little early, because between the ages of about 10 and 13, I was going through some incredible emotional shifts. And they say that going into puberty for young men and girls, I guess, is a very, very upheaving time in their lives. And without a lot of positive input from parental or adult figures, it can go in some really wild directions. In my case, it was embedded in this negative orientation thing. I would go back to my basement bedroom and I would fantasize to protect myself. I'd go off into fantasy worlds that got vengeance on my enemies. It got even with the bullies who picked on the kids and me in school. It got even with someone who slighted me. Even adults. I mean, they talk in various relationships how we have our darker side, and there's things that you have thought, as an example, that you'd never want to share with anybody because they're so cruel or they're so unspeakably out of sync with what's going on that you would be too ashamed to share it with someone. Like, boy, I'd like to knock his head off, or I'd like to kill this guy, or she's such a bitch, We all do that. I didn't know that. So I'm adding to the problem, the impetus of this negative orientation. I must be really evil little kid because I'm thinking all these horrible things. I was thinking of them in increasing amounts and increasing frequency, so it's a kind of conditioning and negative conditioning that I wasn't aware of other than effect. I noticed that if I worked on a certain scenario, a certain kind of patterning in my fantasies, right, after a while it became numb, it became insignificant, it became not enough. So I had to add embellishments to it, a new level. And it just very subtle, but over many, many years, it just kept going more and more.
We got 4 minutes left.
I've known young people that I've been able to talk to honestly, and knowing them well enough and friendly enough over enough years, share with me, because it was of real importance to me to know where I dove off the deep end. And they would admit that sometimes they went
I find it interesting to hear about all these things, and it helps to understand the mind of a serial unaliver.
off into happier orientations. They had a period where they went off into some real morbid or negative fascinations, but they grew out of it, quote unquote, grew out of it. It stopped providing a service that they needed. It stopped filling a hole or a gap, or let's say an adult came along and started sharing something with them or showed them a new avenue of acting out that completely obliterated that need or vacated it, and they let it go. I didn't. The adult wasn't there. My mother was there. I mean, she was there to beat me. She was there to humiliate me. She was there to use me as an example of how inferior men are. And that was a great little lady there.
I think that was a lot of the problem. I think that's where this stemmed from, the way his mama viewed men and how inferior they were. I don't know where Rooster is. I hope he's feeling okay today. I know that he got in a car accident on Wednesday, I think, and has been doing physical therapy a lot since then.
Kind of preceded this female movement we have now of getting rights, of getting equal rights, of getting equal standing, of getting equal presence in various theaters.
But actually, you had experimented.
I was finding out the hard way what women's rights and women's antagonism. I mean, women are drove about things like that. They get upset about the belittlements they get and the lack of equality that they experience. Unfortunately, my mother developed, and it's not fair to talk about a dead person that way. They can't defend themselves. They can't give you another perspective on what really happened. I can only surmise to try to be fair. Looking back on it, I'm seeing that she was making an effort to balance her pain with what she was experiencing. And if you look at her dad, he's a wimp. He never did anything. Mom did everything, so she orientated toward her. So she comes out doing that stuff. I find out in sociological studies and psychological studies, that's normal. Not necessarily healthy, but that happens. And my dad, being the wimp out of his family, goes and finds my mom, who's the dynamo out of her family, and they get married, and it'll either work or it won't. And in his case, it didn't work because she kept hammering on him. She wanted him to change this. She wanted him to change that, and he couldn't handle that. After 13 years, he'd had enough.
Plug it in, Abellas. Plug your phone in.
What I resented was I had a mother, I had a father. Father worked, he brought in a big paycheck. We had a nice house, we had friends, we went to school, right? We had birthdays, we had Christmas, we had vacations. He had Saturday night with the poker buddies out in the guest house by the garage. We were living pretty good. And she absolutely hated that. This stereotypical response of this deadhead, this muttonhead she's married to, of wanting to go out and play cards in a smoke-filled room, drinking beer and with these old war buddies. See, I had another problem. My father was in the 1st Special Service Force in World War II. They did a book and a movie called The Devil's Brigade. He was a combat sergeant in that group. And he volunteered for that as a single man. They would not take married men. That's how my parents met. She was working as a secretary in Helena, Montana, the capital city. He's a few miles out of town at an old, retired, closed-down cavalry fort for the U.S. Army that was reopened as a secret base for these guys to train out of at Fort William Henry Harrison, just outside of town. They got to know each other. They quite, it wasn't secretly, but it was very quietly got married, because if they'd have known he got married, he'd have been kicked out of the group. This is what was described as a suicide brigade. 5,000 men trained in all these devastation ways, right? He goes off to war, and he does some horrible things. He can't talk about those things.
All right. So that was the end of that one, or all that we have of it. Now, I'm going to take you back just 1 second to yesterday when we were talking about the Chloe Divers trial. So let me bring this up for you real quick so you understand the correlation we're going to make here. Hold on, this is going to play if I don't pause it. Okay. Let's see. I'll go back to my page so I can go to the playlist because I'm gonna show you who Jason Spillers reminds me of, okay? I paused it, but it started playing. Okay. Let me get the playlist to load. I'm only going to play a portion of his testimony here so we can understand the correlation that I'm about to make. I want you to see about like maybe 5 minutes of this guy talking.
Schindler is someone that I've known for like 20 years. Friend of mine. Okay. Yep. I used to work with Peggy's daughter at
and we'll continue on with this probably tomorrow. So yeah, I'm going to play a little bit of this so you can remember this guy from yesterday, and then I'm going to show you exactly who he reminds me of.
A sports bar called Hickory Tavern. Okay.
And we don't need to get into the weeds. I'm just trying to provide them some context of who Peggy is.
Peggy's a friend of mine for 20 years.
All right. Yep. So Peggy's got a house in North Carolina.
Yep.
You all were spending time at Peggy's house.
That's right.
Who was there?
Me, Shaylig, Kawani, Peggy, Z, and Nimsy.
Okay. And how long did y'all spend at Peggy's house around
that day?
Just that day?
I mean, no. We were around Peggy's house a lot.
Okay. You specifically referenced November 25th. Why do you know that date?
Because that was the day that this woman pulled off on the side of the road, and I feel like I think that was like a real turning point for Kawani, which had massive effects on her psyche, which led to the death of Nimsy.
Okay. So tell me, on November 25th, you were talking about this woman, which we'll get into that in a minute. Prior to this woman being involved, what were you observing of Kawani on the 25th?
On that day?
Yes.
Okay. So it was actually pretty normal day. Like, she was being like relatively calm and clear.
I'm just going to.
And like, you could tell, like, I
back it up a little bit so you can remember. Hi, Rubber.
Okay. And I'm not trying to be offensive. I'm just trying to get to the root of it.
I'll take that compliment, like I said.
The purpose of my question is I want to establish with you, and I will do it through questioning, the difference between an independent delusion that Kawani might have been having versus belief systems that you all adopted that maybe are a departure from the masses.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I find that to be rather irrelevant to the whole thing, because, you know, we're talking about a woman. And so here's the thing. I'm going to lay it down for you like this. When we went to Florida, me and Jennifer, we had like a real curiosity about this. And we're like, you know, what kind of strangeness is this? Like, you know, I met Z. I think, like I say, I feel like I had met the wives like briefly at Peggy's house, but only for a minute. And
Okay. So we remember this guy, right? How he goes on and on. He talks about the meaning of life and everybody else's pathway to enlightenment and all of the things that the word salad, how it doesn't make sense, how he was wanting to be in a polygamist or polyamory or polygamist, however you want to associate the word or the definition. I'm sure there's different definitions, but he wanted to be in that type of relationship. Meanwhile, he is harassing minors on the phone, and he's telling them that he's gonna kill them and that their hymen better be intact and all of those things, right? Okay, this is who that guy reminded me of, and I've talked about it a couple of times. This guy, from the moment I saw him, I didn't like him, but this is exactly from the moment I've heard that man speak and see him and the word salad and all of the things. This is who he reminds me of.
We decided together to live.
I wanted to show you this, and I want to go ahead and let you know this is going to be the absolute worst example of polyamory or polygamy that you have ever seen. I mean, you know, Warren Jeffs is a horrible person, but like the example of having multiple wives, this is the worst example you could ever see. This is from TLC. It's titled The Most Dramatic Merrifield Moments from Seeking Sister Wife. And I wanted to make sure, real quick, let me make sure I'm telling you the correct channel. I think it's from TLC. Hopefully I won't get in trouble. Yeah, it is from TLC. I can just keep it not monetized, which is fine for today. So we're going to watch this. Horrible example, like I said, of anything where you have multiple people in your relationship. So if you haven't seen this, this is going to be something, to say the least.
Danielle is really emotional, and we're running around in circles because God hasn't delivered her from jealousy. I'm praying and trusting that soon he'll take that away. She'll see clearly on this whole matter, and we'll be able to work through this because we decided together to live this way. And so we've got other people involved, and we can't just say we're not going to do this anymore.
We were looking at wedding venues for Garrick and Roberta, and it brought up a lot of emotions from the past.
Sorry for highlighting that comment. I didn't mean to highlight that. Eek, I don't think so, love.
I have definitely had to work through a lot of jealousy and insecurities with my own self since Garrick and I started looking for a sister wife. I'm having a hard time talking about that because I feel like it's something I've worked through. So I don't want to go back to that spot. You know what I'm saying?
All right, tequila time. You guys ready?
This is going to be triggering. This young woman, he puts her through hell. And I just saw that they had a baby, and I think the other wife is pregnant. So we can talk about that after we watch this. I haven't watched it in a while because he had such a punchable face because of what comes out of his mouth that I just wanted to punch the TV screen or my phone when I watched it. Eek says this is polygamy, not polyamory. Thank you for that. Yeah, look at his face.
For this one, it's better know right here in Cabo as a baby maker, okay?
She doesn't know none for her. She needs it all. Do you sell the baby maker?
We have to wait for the baby making.
I didn't say I busted it out.
What'd you say?
I didn't say I busted it out till after the wedding. No.
Oh my God. Oh wow, look at the sunset. Wow. Sister. That's cool.
He said, I don't care about you now, and you can just feel like you could cut the tension with a knife. My goodness.
Everything okay?
No, it's not okay. And Sarah, yeah, that's a great point to bring up. I don't want to highlight it, because I don't want to put your info out there. Hello Kitty says, hey lady, maybe you should be looking for a brother husband. No doubt. Like, I wonder how he would react if she did that to him.
What's wrong?
Translator? Yeah. Irmã, eu preciso te falar uma coisa. Eu acho que essa viagem vai ser start para realmente a nossa cerimônia. Então, que agora...
Hold on a minute. I'm sorry. I know y'all couldn't see that. I'll take it back just a smidgen so I can tell you what they're saying. And, he has to have a translator to understand what she's saying, and that's going to be his wife.
Translator? Yeah. Irmã, eu preciso te falar uma coisa. Eu acho que essa viagem vai ser...
I think this trip will be...
start para realmente a nossa cerimônia.
A starting point for our actual ceremony.
Então, que agora...
So now it's time to tell the truth.
Seja declarada todas as verdades. Antes de você voltar, Eu e Garrick tivemos um momento íntimo. É muito importante para mim que você fique bem e não fique magoada.
Sister,
Y'all hear the dramatic music.
I need to tell you something. The night you slept in our room before you came back and called, that we had an intimate moment. I didn't tell you because I didn't know if it was going to hurt you or not. But I need to speak.
Like, he calls her the bigger wife, the old wife, the fat wife, and they're not supposed to be sleeping together until they get married and all of that. And he has been all up in them guts. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be vulgar. I apologize, and I'll keep that to a minimum. This stuff pisses me off, though. Again, I apologize.
Roberta telling me that her and Garrick had sex that first night. Because, like, you guys had sex?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Like, yeah, and laughs about it. Are you freaking serious?
I am taken off guard a little bit. I expect Garrick and Roberta to have intimacy, have sex, and those things are normal in a relationship. But I think I'm taken back by when it happened.
I'm sorry. It is funny to see this dude acting stupid. It's going to show some of her emotional moments. So this part won't be, her emotional parts is not going to be funny. But like this dude acting a straight fool is funny. So it might not show the funny parts. I don't know if it's going to be more emotional. It's that this one's titled The Most Dramatic. So it might not be as funny as I led you to believe. And I apologize for that.
I'm trying to replay that night in my mind.
This is Seeking Sister Wives. I'm showing you who that guy, Jason Spillers, we were watching yesterday, reminds me of this guy. Okay, Trixie, we love you and thank you for being here. Yeah, Toxic, Jason Spiller reminds me of Garrick Merrifield, and I was showing you guys who this was. Who he would be as like in a polyamory or polygamy style relationship.
Roberta didn't want me to be alone that first night, so she offered for me to stay in the room with her and Garrick. Roberta told me how important family was, that it wasn't important right now for her and Garrick to be together. It was more important for all of us to be together because we hadn't seen each other in so long. Then finding out that they were intimate definitely threw me because I felt like I was lied to in that moment. Like they really didn't want me to be there, and it made me feel like I wish I would have been alone.
Hey, what's up there, folks? Oh, nothing. Just want to know how your trip was in Mexico.
Nice to be back with the boys and stuff. Miss them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then I kind of wanted to touch base on our conversation.
Yeah.
I guess I left when we hung up. I couldn't sleep because I kept thinking about you. I was just,
Really?
well, yeah, because I was like, I just don't want her to be sad.
Yeah. I definitely had some sad moments on the trip. That first night, like first that they were intimate, and so that was a little bit tricky because I felt like maybe she was deceiving me and like lying to me that like it really, like I wasn't really important. It was about Garrick, you know. It felt hurtful. Danielle had,
and again, I'm relating it to that Jason Spillers guy. Like this guy reminds me of him so much.
Has been really sad in the past about this plural lifestyle. I've seen them fight a lot, and I feel like she was frustrated. She would cry on my shoulders. Hearing the conversation in Mexico, how she was feeling jealousy, it did leave me with some concern because it would just really suck if she got to the point where she was depressed again. Did it make you feel like the third wheel at all?
a little bit sometimes. Like you're standing there and they're holding hands and like you feel like, I don't know.
Did you feel like, why don't you hold my?
Eek says, why even televise this? It makes his wife look ridiculous. And I agree, but this is what TLC does. That's why I don't like them. But you know, let me also add that this is from them. I'm borrowing their video. This is fair use, and please give them a like and subscribe. Toxic says, what about these women's self-respect? What about their own confidence in themselves? How on earth can this really work? I mean, you know, Sarah, like Sarah says, it's about respect, transparency, communication, and each person can date whomever they like. You have to be very confident in yourself, and you would have to be a very loving person. I personally couldn't do it. Yeah, and it paints the whole plural lifestyle in a horrible light. So don't, if you're thinking about doing that, don't let this be an example to go by or anything. But yeah. We're playing this though because Garrett reminds me of Jason Spillers. This is the most dramatic moments. I'm going to show you some like parts where he looks really stupid, and that's what I wanted y'all to kind of see.
My hand too. Do you think you'll ever feel like you're not as good as Roberta? Kind of that. Or kind of. Do you think there's any favorites? Or do you think he treats her differently than you?
I feel like he did on the trip.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's hard for me too, seeing like how excited he gets with Roberta.
I don't know why it just.
It's hard for me to see Danielle upset. She shouldn't be living this way, but she wants to please her husband, Garrick, and she loves him very much. I hope if Danielle ever feels that this isn't.
Hey, can y'all hear me? Did it strike me? Hold on. Let me check. Can y'all hear me?
As regards time, I always quote Ernst Marcus as it's utterly impossible to measure the changes of things by time. Quite the contrary, time is an abstraction from that we deduce from change.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. All right. That was weird. That's never happened before. I sincerely apologize. We will talk about something else. See, TLC is such an asshole. Assholes. All right. Let me see. I can't be on much longer. Let me pull this up. Maybe we can go over. I had a Charles Manson interview saved. Maybe we can go over that. I figured that copyright me, but I didn't think it would be that damn serious, like where it would stop midstream. Like that was just ridiculous. Hold on. Sorry about that. I didn't think it would stop midstream like that. Like that was just ridiculous.
Hey.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I was like, hey, I was waving my arms in real life and stop the TLC. And I was
Yeah.
calling you. I'm like calling you on Discord. Allegedly, that happened to me once. I was
Oh,
playing Law and Crime, but I was playing one of their documentaries, like about a fire. It was a brand new one, and I let it go for I think maybe 45 seconds, and I didn't stop and talk over it or commentate over it every like 15 or 20 seconds, which they wanted, and they suspended my live, and I couldn't. I was like, what the? Where did where did I go? Where did I go? And I didn't even know I was gone. Yeah, abort, abort.
oh, okay. Yeah, my computer was making this sound and it was going like do 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 do, and I was like, "What the hell is that? Why is it my
Because I was
computer?" But it
calling
was you
you.
calling me. That is
I'm
hilarious.
like, well, I'm glad you're back. Just whenever you get done, just cut that little part out, and it won't be no issue. Stupid.
Yeah, I might I don't know how to like cut it out and then keep it as a live. I only know how
It'll
to cut
take
it out
away
and then
your it'll take away your live chat. It's the only thing that I just hate that when you have to transform anything in the back, then it'll take your live chat, but it also saves you from getting demonetized for that particular video. So
yeah. Okay, maybe we can talk in Discord and you can tell me how to like cut that part out and then keep it as a live.
right, hello Kitty, a Big Brother watching problem. It's AI. Whatever was, they out the little bots to check for things, and they hear one word or a series of words and they're just like, boop.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But
Oh,
that's okay. I wish we could have seen more of Garrett, but I should have known better.
I was
TLC.
wanting to poke Garrett in the eye with a fork, but that's
Manson
okay.
has been serving his.
Sorry about that, love. It started playing.
No, you're
Yeah,
fine.
he's an asshole. Like he really is. Like the worst example of a polyamorous or polygamous relationship you could ever see. Not that I'm promoting that, I promote everybody to be happy and that's all I promote. But he's ridiculous.
Happiness is promotable, but his actions seem to be vile. I think maybe you could have like maybe a TL watch party in Discord and we can all discuss it there or on Patreon maybe or something.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So for now, we will watch Charles Manson's first prison interview. It's 17 minutes. So we'll watch this for the rest of the stream, and then that'll have to be it for me today. Thank you, Zio, for helping me with that.
I didn't do anything.
You did. I'll talk to you later.
His time at this prison in Vacaville, California, isolated from his fellow inmates. Manson's first television interview since the murders begins badly.
I know I told you I'm not going to sit in that damn chair, man. I'll stand here and talk with the dude.
Manson refuses to sit in the chair provided. He says he's not going to look up to anyone. But finally,
he's something else. They say that he was locked up with a CIA operative at one point, and like he learned some stuff from him. Like there's a whole rabbit hole we could go down talking about him. But this is one of his first interviews, or the first one. I love y'all too.
Tom Snyder of the National Broadcasting Company asks his first question.
You know, you were sentenced to the gas chamber and then they modified the death penalty. Were you happy when that was done?
I do want to tell you real quick who this is. This is Charles Manson's first prison interview with 60 Minutes Australia, and it is from 60 Minutes Australia. Hopefully they won't act a fool either. Usually they don't. I'm usually fine playing stuff like this.
Was I happy when what was done?
When you found out that you weren't going to the gas chamber?
Set my cell and I do my number like a convict does his number. But there's different colors on different people's backs doing different things. There's a different
I'm going to go ahead and warn you that he talks in riddles.
world. I love the world I live in too, just like Regan loves the world he lives in.
You love the world you live in.
Most assuredly, it's me.
You love all the pain that you've caused people, all the anguish you.
Oh, I don't know.
Again, the Riddler over here. I mean, we do learn from pain, like having our heart broken or being upset, but he, he's weird to me because he does seem intelligent to an extent, but also more manipulative than intelligent. Ed Kemper is extremely intelligent, in my opinion. Manson, not as intelligent, but more manipulative, in my opinion.
It teaches you things. Like when you put your hand in fire, you know not to do that again. Yeah. Yeah, I understand that.
Written accounts indicate that you told the authorities, don't let me out. I can't cope with the outside world. Do you have a recollection of that? And
you make a desperate plea out of something, man. There's no desperate plea out of it. I say, I can't handle the maniacs outside. Let me back in.
I didn't use the word desperate. That's your word, Charles.
Yeah, well, your inflection and your voice tones were implications there.
Well, you use the word maniacs on the outside. How are you different from the maniacs on the outside? And why do you call them maniacs? Because you know something, they think you are one.
Yeah, it would reflect. If you hold the negative up to the light, you don't see the light, you just see the negative. So I'm a reflection of your negative. There's no doubt about that. And I can handle that also. I've been handling, ain't I?
I don't know, have you?
Well, I've been up and down these damn hallways, in and out of these nut wards for the last 10 years. You think you could follow that act? I'm playing.
Now, again, remember this time period, you know, he was in prison a lot of his life. His mother was a lady of the night and supposedly sold him for a pitcher of beer one night. He had a bad childhood and he was raised up in the prison system. Yeah, Reese says Manson was created. And I mean, I think so. I think, you know, his actions, to be fair, put him in the environment that created him. But you ought to go down those rabbit holes. I don't want to do it too much because some people don't get down with it. But like, there's a whole conspiracy behind Manson and how he might have been a CIA operative. You got to think about like JFK having been assassinated a few years before this and how the CIA more than likely had something to do with that. But I don't want to go down too many conspiratorial rabbit holes either.
Playing for my life. You working for money.
When you say you're playing for your life, am I to assume that you think that someday you're going to get out of here?
Get out of here. Get out of here. Where would I go now? Let's see.
What would you do if you got out of here?
I got out of here.
What if they said to you tomorrow morning, Charles, hey, listen, you're free. You can go wherever you want to go. Do whatever you want to do. What would you do?
I'll probably go out front on the grass and sit down.
The question is, should Manson ever go free? It's 10 years now since he and his 3 female accomplices, virtually robots under his control, were convicted of murder. On August the 9th, 1969, they murdered actress Sharon Tate and 4 other people in Los Angeles. The following night, there were 2 more victims, Lino and Rosemary LaBianca. In court, Manson was also charged with 2 more mutilation murders. Ranch hand Donald Shea was beheaded, and musician Gary Heineman had his ear cut off. According to some...
He also unalived one of the heirs to the Folgers Coffee Company.
Accounts, Manson and his family may have been responsible for as many as 35 killings.
If you got out of here, there are a lot of people who think you'd go start killing people again.
Again? Well, you guys are misinformed. I haven't killed anyone. I didn't break the law. Judge knew that. But the people didn't want to hear it. The judge knew it. He washed his hands. He said, I know it, but what can I do? People want this.
The judge never said that.
Yeah.
Judge never said
That's what Older said.
No, judge didn't say that.
He got off and shook their hands, didn't he? You're so white and pure.
Judge didn't say you were innocent.
Are you innocent?
Innocent of what?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
None of us are innocent.
Yeah, just because you're convicted in a courtroom doesn't mean you're guilty of something.
What does mean you're guilty?
When you know you're guilty.
What about Shea?
What about him?
Well, what about him?
He got killed.
Well, the word is you killed him.
Word is that you're an old woman. Word is you have turkey in the sky. Word is, I don't know what word is. Somebody else tell you that. I didn't tell you that.
Did you kill Shea?
Hell no.
Did you cut Hinman's ear off?
Hell yes.
He said, hell yes. Yes, I did.
I
thought that was funny too.
What did it feel like?
Yeah.
Well,
Sorry, love, my fingers weren't moving fast enough.
No, you're fine.
You
I was
said,
just laughing at the same thing. I said, yeah, Manson never actually unalived anybody, but sent everybody to do his bidding. But then he says, "Oh yes, yes, I did kill their ear off." So yeah, I thought that was funny.
yeah, that was funny. It's his conviction is weird to me because technically, no, he didn't kill anybody. I mean, I would think you would get aiding and abetting. But I understand why they didn't want him on the street because if he could make people do that, he's not safe to be in society.
Abelis, are you saying that he unalived someone before the Tate and LaBianca unalivings? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think they're talking about this Shay person with somebody he unalived before then, and he's denying it. And then he was talking about cutting the ear off the other person. The whole
I got you.
I don't know if you guys know, but the whole reason for that was that Sharon Tate, I think it was Sharon Tate or one of his other victims, but I think it was Sharon Tate, lived in the house where the Beach Boys used to live. And he went to the Beach Boys and sang for them. And the Beach Boys were supposed to get him a record deal and never did and kind of reneged on it. And then he went to the house to he sent them to that house to get payback. And that happened. Sorry, and the Beach Boys weren't living there anymore, but the Biancas were, or I'm sorry, Sharon Tate was. My mind is all over the place. And so that's why that happened, is because she lived in the house where the Beach Boys used to live, and that's who he was looking for that night.
I had done what he said for about 20 years. I'd done everything he told me to do. And I got to thinking, now, why don't this guy do something I tell him to do? And he said, no. I said, well, how comes I'm always doing what you tell me to do, but then you never do what I say do? And he said, well, blah, blah, blah. It's a comedy. It's a comedy tragedy.
The body of Sharon Tate is make-believe.
That's make-believe.
Make-believe.
That's make-believe to the people that went in there and did what they did.
Mm-hmm. And who were those people? But you know who they were.
Sure, I know who they were.
They were with you at the Spawn Ranch. They were part of this thing called, if not the Manson family or the Manson cult, the Manson Ranch. Call it what you will.
So then, what? You dealt the hand down there in L.A. You and that press, you dealt the hand. You put me on Life magazine, had me convicted before I walked in the courtroom. You had what people wanted to buy. And when they wanted to buy it, they didn't give a damn if they had to convict a district attorney. They'd have convicted the whole building.
I believe that. But he is guilty of what he did. That girl said Tex Watson had 5 children while in prison. I didn't know that. They used to have conjugal visits back then.
To get that dollar bill.
They might still have conjugal visits, but back then, like, you could pay a guard and you could sleep with your wife or whoever.
Now, they had big bucks going there. He made 27 million, 100 billion. I'm bumming $10, $15 from my friend here.
Here's another newspaper account that you can now speak to since you haven't done it before. That on the night following the killings at the house on Cielo Drive in Los Angeles, you accompanied 4 people to a home occupied by Mr. and Mrs. Leo LaBianca.
Yeah.
That you went inside that house and you tied them up and assured them that they were not going to be hurt. That you went back outside and sent Kasabian and Krenwinkel and Watson and Atkins inside the house to kill them. True or false? Did you do that?
Is all you get, buddy.
Chair's getting hot, huh?
Right. I was just listening to him and he's just like, and then never answers the question. Interesting. And he has that stool there because he said he wasn't going to sit in a chair and look up to anybody, which is also interesting. That's why he got a stool. Oh, wow, bad girl.
Did you do that?
Did I kill anyone?
No. Did you go in and tie up the LaBiancas that night? Very simple question.
That night.
August 10th, 1969.
That night. August the 10th.
Did you?
1969.
Why duck it? Why dodge it? Why not answer it yes or no once and for all? Put it behind you.
Did I kill anyone?
Did you tie up the LaBiancas?
Is Yep here?
Atkins testified you did.
That's what Susie said?
That's what she said.
Yeah.
And you remember, you were in the courtroom when she said it.
She's written 3 books, and each time she said something different.
Mm-hmm.
Each time.
Did you tie him up?
Did I?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we came down from Abilene. And
I think I misunderstood. I think Abellis was saying, like the interviewer could say hello, and then Charles would be like, "Yep, yep,
Let's stay in Los Angeles, August 10, 1969.
there was a hole in the wall gang there.
Why don't you want to talk about it, Charles?
He is deceased now, and I'm sorry I didn't introduce everybody. Zio is who's up on stage with me.
Why don't you?
Because I'm an outlaw and I go so far, and then that's all you know.
And if you did,
that's like asking Jesse James.
And if, as others have written and as others have testified and as the media has reported, you did that.
Yeah.
And you sent your friends back in to do the deed. Aren't you a coward?
My friends back into.
This was back when you could smoke in there, and he's done got the damn interviewer so stressed out that the interviewer had to have a cigarette. My goodness.
To do the terrible deed.
Doesn't that
the
make
wicked deed. Did we have the castle there with the vampires and the Frankenstein and the bugs and lizards dying in the deserts? Did we have the water that's dying and the whales are being killed and the seals are
Here we
dying?
go again. Lay it off on somebody else. Let's
Well,
point to all the other injustices.
I'm in the world all by myself?
Yeah, on this one you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was okay, if that's the way you see it for you.
You've never talked about this before, but I'm going to make it. I'm going to try it one more time.
Now,
You can see them where I'm
you got a pistol on you?
No, sir. They wouldn't let me in here if I had a pistol. You
Yeah.
know that as well as I do. So why even ask the question? Okay.
Well, I just thought you might not like what I've done. You want to do something about it.
I don't much care for what you've done.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't. How do you feel about that? A lot of people think you're a monster, Charles. How do you
Yeah,
feel?
they think you're a monster because you reflect this news media on me. Cult leader. I never had long hair before I got busted. I never had a beard before I got busted. I went to shave and the guy said, no, you can't shave. And I said, I need a razor to shave. He said, no, you can't shave. I said, let me get a haircut. He said, no, we don't want you to change your appearance. They said I had a great family and I was the following and leaders and all that. There was no followers and leaders, a bunch of kids out the ranch playing. Me.
Playing at what?
Playing at living.
Besides the son that you had in your marriage, you've got, what, 4 other children somewhere?
I don't think I've been responsible for as much as you people want to lay on me.
All right, somewhere out there, there's at least one son that we know of that's your child, who's probably about 25 or 26 years old. You talk to that kid. What are you going to say to him?
You got to catch it on your own, boy. Train's hard.
He tells his son, you got to catch it on your own, boy. The train's hard.
Road's rough.
Road's rough.
And that's it.
That's all I knew. That's all anyone ever told me.
All right.
So you wouldn't try to be better for him? You wouldn't try to teach him better? Yeah, Doc Bones said Manson ordered the unalivings himself. I couldn't catch it before it rolled up. Yeah, bad girl. He is on some BS. Yeah.
And you want to hear something?
Yeah.
He'll do it better than me.
Do what?
Whatever he does. He'll do it a little better. Kids do, don't they?
Sometimes.
They do.
Yeah. That's what makes them such a guest. They always seem to get through.
How were you in school? I hear that you weren't too good, but maybe I heard wrong.
Depends on which school. I did very well in reform school.
Yeah.
I did good in every place that I was ever told to do good in. I've been an outlaw ever since I was born. I went to reform school when I was about 10, and I learned to box and cry, and I learned to do all the things that you do in reform school. Then I went to, I escaped there a bunch of times, and I went to prison, and I learned everything that you do in prison. And I talked to all the guys and asked them everything they knew, and they told me all the things they knew. And then I went to the end of it, and then the old man would be ready to die, and he'd say, well, son, sincerity is the best gimmick. Remember that. And I said, all right, be sincere. That'll win it. He said, that's it.
Sincerity's the best gimmick. Be sincere and that'll win it. All righty.
Sincerity and honesty, he said, will do it. It'll trick them every time. I said, well, sincere and honesty, I never tried that. I tried everything else, but maybe I'll try sincere and honesty. So then I looked in the book and it says, the wages of sin is death. Now I figured, well, I don't want to die, so maybe I have been sinful here. Maybe I am wrong. Maybe I'll take a look at my life and say, well, I'm going to change it and start all over. You know, and I know I go to God and I say, hey, man, you're going to forgive me? And he's going to say, what do? You forgive you? I mean, what'd you come to me for? Forgive yourself, man. Don't be bothering me.
How do you feel about spending the rest?
How do you forgive yourself? Sorry, y'all. I know I apologize about that background. How do you forgive yourself? Like he's talking about you get to heaven and you talk to God and God's like, it's not me. Forgive yourself. Like, what is that? What is he even saying right there?
Rest of your life in prison.
Well, we're all our own prisons. We each are our own wardens and we do our own times. We get stuck in our own little trips and we kind of judge ourselves the way we do. You know, I can't judge nobody else. The best thing I could do is try to judge myself and live with that.
Let's assume that one day you were paroled. Let's just make believe. Do you ever think you will be?
Hey, period, point blank. Period says my content has been slow as of late too. Oh, really? I'm glad to know I'm not alone. Thank you for that. Yeah, there is so much to laugh at about this.
Yeah, do I ever think I will be? Well, I've never been paroled before. I went up to the board and they said I was incorrigible. And not only was I incorrigible, but that I'd never grow up. And I kind of agreed with them.
If you got out tomorrow, do you have any scores to settle on the outside?
Scores? Do I have any scores out there? And we're making believe, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I'll tell you, buddy. Well, I don't rightly know. I'm stupid to the point to where I'm not really sure.
Believe it or not, there are a lot of people on the outside that think about the possibility of you coming out of here, and they're genuinely scared of you.
Oh, boy, I might just make dust, everything. Terrible. One little guy, terrible. Ooh. Boy, how insecure are we as human beings? Put all our fear on one little guy, afraid to let him out. He might break all the toys.
Why do you say little guy?
He's insane. Like, this is the ramblings of a madman.
Because I'm not the guy you're trying to make out of me. That's not me. I don't know what my way is. Everybody keeps telling me I got all these things. So I read the other day where I had magical powers, and I told everybody in the chapel, I said, zap, 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 zap. I said, where's my magical powers? Well, you can't believe what you read in the press. I can get no magical powers, mystical trips, and all that kind of crap. Yeah, it's kind of silly. Yeah, I'm getting witches and devils, and one guy come up and said, I heard you said you were Jesus. I said, no, man, I ain't said nothing. He said, I'm glad. He said, I'm damn glad. I said, why? He said, I know you ain't him. I said,
Doc Bones says, I think he meant no matter what you do, wrong or right, if you forgive yourself, then you're innocent of anything. And thank you for that. Thank you for that perspective. I agree with that statement, with that's what he meant to say. And I appreciate that.
how do you know? He said, because I am. I said, okay. But I mean, I've been in the nut ward for 10 years, so you can't expect me to rationally take this thing serious.
Interesting. Well, I want to thank you all for being here and thank you all for your lovely perspectives. and all of your thought processes and all of that. I really appreciate you guys being here today. I'm going to have to figure out how to edit out that one part about TLC, and then I will have this back up. So I do apologize about that. Thank you, Zaya, for being up here with me.
Thank you for having me, as always. I really appreciate you talking about the subjects that make a lot of people turn one way or the other. It is what it is. These people are not, if they were sane, they would be out here in society with the rest of us. I know we can say he doesn't sound irrational, and he may not sound irrational, but his thought process is definitely not the rational that's acceptable in society.
Right.
I hear some. You guys are basing out over there, huh?
No, it's my husband's. Sorry.
No, it's
Hello,
fine.
thanks for the conversation, everyone. It's my husband's TV. He's got like that sound bar, and he's playing it in the living room.
Oh, how's dancing? Dancing in the background. Thank you, guys. I'm going to jump down. Allegedly, I just wanted to say congratulations on being mentioned on Plunder. I know that a lot of people came over to see you yesterday and the day before. And then again, you were also mentioned on, what's the other channel you were mentioned on?
Alex
Erickson. So congratulations on that. I did see a mention to one of your thumbnails on a bigger channel that I'm hoping I get to put in the Discord. Anybody who needs a link to the Discord, let me know. And allegedly, have a great rest of your Sunday.
Thank you. I hope that y'all all do too. And I hope you do too. And yeah, I'll be in Discord in a few minutes, and maybe you can help me cut this part out of the video, or the TLC part.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you everybody for being here. And I really appreciate it. Thank you to Abellis for gifting the memberships. And yeah, thank you all for being here. Thank you for your comments. You guys make this channel by commenting in the comment box, and I really appreciate it. You guys are awesome. I love to watch y'all chat and to see all the different perspectives. And I like to do like old school interviews, one day out of the weekend where we go over past interviews of people who have been convicted of horrible crimes. I just find it interesting, and I'm glad that y'all sat here with us and talked about it and enjoyed it as well. Basil is doing good. He's been on the couch. I meant to tell you, not on the couch, but sitting here on the bed with me. I meant to tell you that, Abellis. He's been doing good. Oh, and let me play this for you real quick, and then I'll go ahead and after this jump into our song, and then I will see you all tomorrow at 1:30 Eastern. Same time every day. Here's this for you, Abellis. Yeah, I wanted to play that so you got to hear all of it, because I know it cut off earlier because my computer was having a moment. All right. Thank you all for being here, and hopefully I will see all of your beautiful screen names tomorrow. Thank you to anybody who has come over from any of the shout outs that we received. I really appreciate you guys. And I'm working on trying to get another video put together and put out on Stefan. I'll see you all tomorrow. Have the best day ever. Bye.